Thank you for your time. My name is Beitula, and this is Bet On It, Shooting from the Hip. Slam, how's it going, brother?
I'm excellent. How are you guys?
Not bad, thanks. I'd like to take a moment of your time, and I'd like to thank you. I appreciate you being here. Please keep in mind what we're doing here at Bet On It, Food for Thought and Shooting from the Hip. We explore human ideas, philosophies, noteworthy information. This exploration is us thinking aloud, a thought exercise, jumping into ideas and examining them and re-examining them. You will find, we are prone to using adult language and expressing opinions. In keeping with that, you shouldn't believe anything we say. We are not experts of any kind. We are just having fun with these ideas, philosophies, and information in the hopes that you will find it fun, interesting, and entertaining. We encourage you to invest time in searching out these subjects and come to your own conclusions. Now, on with the shit show. And today is the first time that we'll be conducting an interview with our guest today is Ken Roche. And just to give you a quick intro, Ken is a massage therapist, a martial arts, a black belt karate instructor, stand-up comedian, and competitive downhill skier. All of that is really impressive, but it's all the more impressive because my good friend Ken is also blind. Ken, so how you feeling?
I'm doing good. I like doing these kind of things. I really appreciate you taking the time to come down and share this experience with me.
Oh, I'm happy to do it. You and I always got along.
Now, I've known you, I don't even know, 15, 20 years?
Close to 20 years. I think I met you in 2004.
And I see online you changed your name from Bob, as I knew you.
Well,
Bobette, but it's Beitula?
Yeah,
Okay.
I just, again, using the names, I'm just playing with the idea. Again,
so what is your name?
No, my full name is Beitula.
Beitula, okay.
Right, and again, it's a long and torrid story, but people commonly refer to me as Bob, so I do respond to Bob, but I more commonly respond to Bet, right? So I know it makes it confusing.
I'm adaptable. My girlfriend, Janine, told me after 3 months of dating, she goes, you know, my name's not Janine. I'm like, well, then what's your name? Like, why don't you just tell me your name? I get it. A long time ago, especially, it was harder for people to express their own name because for the white people, the accents and such like that, it was a lot easier to adopt a more common North American name or whatever.
Right, and that's actually exactly my case. I mean, I can fill out the details. It's a little bit more involved, but I don't know that it's really relevant. This isn't about me.
I just want to know who you are.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, by and large, the person that you interact with is exactly exactly who I say I am. Right. So now, having said that, this isn't about me. This is about you.
Right.
So in the probably, I think it was 2004, or it might have been when we met, maybe 2003. I can't be certain which, but it doesn't really matter.
It's like 20 years.
Yeah.
I was a massage therapist instructor at the Canadian College of Massage and Hydrotherapy where you were a student.
That's right, and that's where our friendship began, because after school finished, we maintained contact and have often
interacted
and socialized because it's funny how many people we commonly know
in meaningful moments. Though I got to tell you, I take to heart your seek for knowledge and expressing your philosophies and all that sort of stuff. So that's another good thing we have in common. So I do the same thing. I'm always looking. My interest in anatomy and physiology as a massage therapist. I also look at astrophysics, quantum physics. I also think as big as you can go outside, you can go as deep inside as well. So
I agree 100%. I think the idea that like common people entertaining grander and grander ideas and getting into the minutia of these very ideas and philosophies and thinking, I think it's the way of the future. I think that for most of us, we're kind of, if we're not completely dissatisfied with social media and all the wonderful things the internet brings, and including our social interactions, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the sense that they're less than desirable, and
a lot of things have been diluted over time or watered down with the information and dissemination of information. But I think it's good that more people have more information. Certainly, have the ability to look up more stuff and a lot more resources if they choose to, but you got to be a lot more selective of where that information is coming from.
Oh, 100%.
But I think you always did. The Bible was the first manuscript printed, mass printed, and you got to look into where did it come from, what influences were brought into that Bible, because it was then disseminated around the world by a certain group of people for a certain person. And I grew up a Christian. I grew up my dad was a very strict Christian guy and an epileptic, so it was very difficult to have any of these philosophical or debate type questions in the house, because my dad only understood the Christian Bible, and that was it. So I've been looking outside of that, but inside of that too. Like, I'm not gonna, I think it matters. I think that's the core of everything. I think this all goes back some 2,000, 4,000, 6,000 years or more.
Well, in my case, my parents are both practicing Muslim. My dad passed 5 years ago, but he was the kind of person that, like, he really was a manifestation of wisdom. So, and it didn't matter how the complexities of society and social interactions, that he could get right to the heart of the matter. And I gotta say, it's probably influenced the way I think. But unlike my dad, he never, and I think it's largely because he couldn't source out more information where I could. And so then I invested a great deal of time in trying to make sense of things.
So one of the benefits of today's society, especially in Canada and other places too, but I really like what's going on in Canada, the multiculturalism. I have a hard time accepting the coloration in the world of discrimination by color. Like, I'm totally blind. I lost my sight slowly over my life, 37 years. I've been functionally completely blind for about 15 years. So it's really hard for me to figure out color. Although I did pretty good on Slim. I'm trying to figure out color. I like difference of backgrounds, difference of opinions. I really do. In my business as a massage therapist, 27 years out of the Waterloo region, honestly, like, I've got a lot of perspective from different cultures, but it's not the color. Europeans are all relatively the same color, and they've been fighting for thousands of years. In amongst Pakistan and India, they've had some conflicts. Asia, they've had conflicts. Even sadly in Rwanda and Africa, within their own coloration, there's been conflicts because of different cultures and different belief systems. I think it's wonderful that the world has adopted English, although I think it's a sad choice. I don't think it's an evolved language. I think it's a devoluted language. But I think it's nice that we all are agreeing at least on one language that we can talk, because that's when we can express our differences. That's when we can start to learn and understand from each other our backgrounds and histories. Without that language, or with that language barrier, there'd be a wall between here, a Muslim and a Christian, and we could not have this conversation.
I'm not to be fair, I'm not a practicing Muslim.
That's okay.
But
historically, right?
No, but I'm not practicing anything.
Right.
I come at everything from a position where I have no faith, so I believe in nothing.
Does that make you an atheist?
No. What it means is that I leave everything as it's most likely is, with a question mark. So, is there a God? The real truth is, as many as the faithful would proclaim that they have an absolute truth, the reality is they don't know any more than those who would turn their nose up to the very idea of a creator or Godhead. So my view is that we should always come at everything from the position that you simply don't know, and it's all a question. And until you can get empirical evidence that overlaps with other independent empirical evidence to support what you may or may not be saying, then you can start to draw conclusions. But I think the moment that you start making your argument faith-based, you don't need evidence. And I'm not going after people who believe. You believe. If you need it, then you need it. Right, and it's far be it from me to question whether or not your faith is valid or invalid. That's for you to figure out.
So here we are, like 5 minutes in, we're talking about, is there a God? But you're right, like, some people have their beliefs and people have their faith about their beliefs, and you don't need to have a lot of scientific information to have either beliefs or faith. But you're absolutely correct in that no one can say, I know.
Definitively. That's right. So I operate from the position that there are, in all likelihood, there are no definitive answers. So then what you're leaning on is, what is the greatest likelihood? So So to be fair, then, if we're going to follow this line of reasoning, then mine is that almost all faith, almost all dogmatic religions are flawed. It doesn't mean at the core of them that there isn't any value in what they're offering. They're codes of conduct, right? And they promote the idea of love and unity. So anything like that, I'm in favor of.
Seems to be universal as well, like in all kinds of different religion-based theories.
Again, you're spot on. Doesn't matter which religion from which corner of the planet that you go to. All of them treat concepts of
if we could all live like that,
like,
treat your neighbors as you would like to be treated, treat other people better than yourself, and care for others regardless of their backgrounds, we would all be much better, including future generations of people that aren't even here yet when it comes to potential global warming, which is another issue. But I just can't believe that our activities on the planet, and they've been pretty invasive, have no effect. I can't believe they have zero effect.
No, I'm in agreement with you, but then the question it becomes then, are we having a profound enough effect that it's actually radically changing the environment, or is it in part our small contribution to the impact in the environment, and then other things that other functions of the natural world, the planet, the solar system? Because, and again, I don't want to, because it's such a deep rabbit hole to go down, but I just,
diverse of possibilities.
Right. So just to sum it up, when you listen to some climate experts, and you listen to experts in things like geology and that sort of thing, that the takeaway I get from it is that the planet's going through natural changes, and because we don't have history or a documented history that goes back far enough for us to see the scales of the cycles of the planet, that we can't know without absolute certainty that this is a byproduct of just one of these cycles, or a combination of one of these cycles and our impact, or just exclusively our impact. I would argue that the likelihood is we simply don't know.
Right.
But you're still confronted with the issue. It's still a real issue. So then how do you move forward, right?
Exactly. I mean, we have to figure out how to survive on the planet, and there's things that are changing here in our solar system, in our galaxy, and in our universe that are definitely without our control. But if we want to exist as a human race, we've got to figure out how to adapt, whether we're causing it or it's reacting. But there are some things, and I was shocked graduating from the public school system here in Ontario, Canada, that I studied the Ice Age. And then to find out that they can take core samples that are kilometers long and find out that there's been many ice ages.
Oh yeah, it's a reoccurring cycle. Again, a pattern within the Earth itself.
But these are grandiose ideas, and these are very important because our magnetic North Pole is moving. We are overdue. Scientifically, they can tell that there was a polar flip happens about every 150,000 years or whatever. Like, we're behind on that.
Yes, I've heard that said before too.
And many other natural disasters. Like what is it? Yosemite Park.
The caldera, Yosemite, the caldera there, the volcano.
Yeah,
there.
But we're overdue with that.
But you know what? I've heard geologists say that we can't prevent caldera from becoming active, but we have enough sufficient technology that we could do stuff to off gas it so that it's not nearly as dramatic as say Mount St. Helens, where it blows the whole side of a mountain away, right? That instead that we could intercede in such a way that we could allow for it to off gas in a way that would be safe and not produce
Well, they're talking about catastrophic for North America. They're talking that this could potentially blow.
Oh, it would devastate the planet.
And I'm glad people are looking into this kind of stuff and trying to mitigate these losses, including near Earth asteroids. And...
To be fair, the research into this stuff isn't new, but we're overstimulated. The internet provides so much access to stuff, and I think people allow themselves to be misled into thinking that all this is just recent. There were experts and researchers and scientists in the 60s and 70s who were talking about the very same things that we're talking about, except back then there wasn't the ability to, like we are here in front of a camera, talking, sharing these ideas. They didn't have the capacity to do that. But could you have imagined then what it would have been like to have the ability to do this, say, in the 70s. Because back in the 70s, here in Canada and the US, I think there were three American stations, ABC, NBC.
I had 3 channels growing up.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And now we are in the age of the internet where there's virtually any kind of content that you can imagine.
I'm 53 years old, and I remember transitioning from the radio to the television, black and white. And my parents got a color TV because I was visually impaired at 9, 10. And so it was a big deal when all of a sudden the television came in. And you know what would happen? I mean, just like now, like a lot of people may find this not to their taste, and they might have cut out a long time ago. Hopefully other people are still sticking with us, but there's so much information out there that if you're not giving people what they want to hear, then they move on to other things, or they get distracted by things that may or may not matter. I like to have conversations that matter. So I love my massage therapy sessions with people one-on-one for an hour and a half. I often keep people longer just because I really like what they're talking about. So, but a lot of people are just like, move on. And then they get distracted. And, the people who are in the 1%, maybe of the 1%, because they say in North America, a couple years ago was that campaign about the 1%. If you're in North America and you make more than $40,000 Canadian, you are one of the 1%. And I'm like, I'm not a global decider, right? I don't shape the economies of the planet, but I certainly was on a global scale one of the financially privileged for a long time, just because luckily I was born here. And perhaps your family luckily got here. You were born here. Other people, get here.
Actually, I came here when I was 8 years old.
Yeah, so I mean, but that was still by fortune because you could have gone somewhere else.
Sure,
right?
100%.
So I do buy into like North America or first world privilege. I do buy into that. It's not fair, but then there's a dissemination there too, because I've seen some arguments by some uber rich during the crash of 2008, 2009. Their simple argument is like, if you don't support the uber rich, like who's going to buy the jets? Who's going to have the resources for the Rolexes?
Okay, it's that trickle down.
Trickle down economics. Like, there are guys that spend,
which is ridiculous.
25, 30. I read a book, Information at the Speed of Light, or Speed of Thought, Information at the Speed of Thought by Bill Gates back in the early 90s, whatever. I didn't read it till 2000. But there were people that were spending $30,000 for computers to play Frogger back in the 80s.
Can you imagine?
But if it wasn't for them, you wouldn't have all of the plethora of games that we have now, right? And same thing with all of the medical marvels that go on here. And certainly in Canada, we're somewhat, they say, a one-class medical system. I disagree because I'm a massage therapist and I'm outside of OHIP, government-funded benefits. So it's work-related, or people can pay for it to get better care. You still get that. But in the States, it's a lot more defined that, there's certainly multiple levels of care. But if it wasn't for that high end, then the low end would have stayed low. And even now we're starting to disseminate, better hygiene, better food. We're doing a better job. I know we've had talks about, resource sharing around the world and how it could have been done even 20 years ago. We were having these conversations.
Right. The idea that you could have a resource-based economic system, so that then it's more about the management and distribution of resources to make sure people get adequate.
I recently just seen. I'm not great with recalling names and stuff, but it's like a farm. It's a cargo ship perhaps, and they grow all kinds of stuff. And they can ship these farms to people rather than the food. And Sam Kinison, do you know who he is?
Yeah, of course I know.
Way back in the 80s, 90s, Sam Kinison. He was definitely exactly. Yeah. But he often said, like, why move lettuce to the people? Like, it's not working. Why not take people to the food? And he was a stand-up comic, and I am a stand-up comic, but I really wish I had more of a political message, I guess you could say.
Yeah, but wouldn't that tank your
yeah, but some people are really good at it.
I'm not.
I just wish I could be more. I would like to have a message that matters.
Well, I mean, everybody would love to be George Carlin, but
exactly
right.
I watched one of George Carlin's episodes, and he was talking about like the first Iraq attack, and I'm sure there's some insensitives in what I just said there, but he was talking. I watched it during like Afghanistan, and I could have swore it was the exact same applicable. It was very relevant material a decade or two later. It was incredible.
Well, because I think that. The reality is the methodologies employed by the geopolitics of like all the big players in the world is the same regardless of what decade. right?
Yeah.
So and the reality is, no much how much we promote the ideas of egalitarian societies and democracy, we live on a planet where, for the last 5,000 years, history will bear this out for me. It's empire building, and if you think and if you think that that's a thing of the past, you're not paying attention. Right?
Empires rise and empires fall,
but they exist in every time of history, including today.
Absolutely, and that shows that these things are I think, even beyond culture, beyond country. And it's a large organization, or a group of organizations that have been working towards this for decades and generations.
Okay, so then what motivates them? So if
power, I mean, power and influence,
sure.
because they want to make it work out for them and their generations, and accumulation of not just wealth. I mean,
it starts with wealth, and then once they reach a certain point in wealth where now it's not even a consideration, that there's so much of it that even if they tried to burn it all in a single lifetime, they couldn't.
Absolutely not.
All right,
but I also do believe that the people that are in power, whether it be the royals, the Pope, or the Illuminati, I do think there's a level.
Do you subscribe to the idea that there's some kind of secret cabal behind everything? I don't think it's so secret anymore.
I don't think it's so secret anymore. I think people realize that there are these influence of powers, and again, that I think they're bigger than countries. Countries are listed companies as well.
Sure.
So I don't think it's really a secret that there are people that are influencing the direction. I mean, every election shows us that you have choices, or we think we have choices. Within those choices, how much we have choices. And with modern psychology, we know that you can manipulate somebody's choice based on a bigger picture, smaller picture. You think there's more lemon in a box if it's a yellow box. So like all that kind of science has been taught. So do people manipulate us to choose? Absolutely.
100%. Yeah. I don't know that, in my estimation, I don't know that there was ever a super secretive organization that, like, a subculture that aspired to dominate the globe. And my view is, even if there were, that means they'd all be vying for control of even that small minority of people who are all wanting power and control. And so their infighting would prevent them from
potentially, and hopefully that's true, because we do know that competition is better for the general public, and we wouldn't want the major players, and we can just pick Russia, China. Now they're talking about a new type of system, against the Western world, the United Nations, so-called freedom and democracy, of which there's multiple types of democracy, as I just found out as well.
I'm a huge fan of direct democracy.
Yeah, I don't know that. I think there's like 5 types of them. So when you look
but I still favor, like I said, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I still favor direct democracy.
Well, there's one type of democracy where the Constitution cannot be changed by a vote. Then there is another type of democracy where the controlling majority can choose to change the democracy, the Constitution,
lawmakers
at any time.
Yeah,
that's dangerous.
Well, but here's the thing: you're going to look. Democracy, by its very definition, is mob rule.
Absolutely.
So, all right.
Majority.
Okay, so then, now that we're having this conversation, so the choices then become: you either run by elitists who they'll claim some kind of authority beyond themselves, right? That allows for them to act on our behalf. But my argument always is that if those individuals or representatives are of the poorest quality, then what kind of leadership do you have? Well, you have nothing but the poorest quality. So then it didn't.
But if you also allow people to choose based on what they want, you're not going to get a great quality of leadership.
Okay. All right. So now I'm going to take this in a different direction, because you brought it up. So it's the quality of the individual. So I would argue then that everybody who's conditioned to favor their subjectivity, so it's another way of saying that their biases, their preferences, their prejudices, their opinions, that they supersede everybody else's, that's the real danger, because it only fosters division
Absolutely. And we see this all the time in all these micro elections, whether it's the municipality, the province, the federal level, where they pick a certain topic because it appeals to a gross majority of it.
Right.
Whether it's the teachers who vote for the teacher's contract, or it's the healthcare workers that vote for what's best for them, as opposed to what's best for. Now, I wanted to bring this up because we're on the topic. Was it Aristotle? Way back 600 maybe BC, they were in favor of democracy, but you had to be an educated group. You had to
Socrates.
Socrates?
It might have even been Plato, because
It was
he talked
yes.
talked about philosopher kings.
So you had to be an educated group of people that didn't necessarily bend to your own subjective opinions, and you had to look at what's actually best for the group.
Okay, so that's interesting you bring it up. So
not everybody by birth, do you have the right to vote. You had to earn that right through education, and a diverse education.
Okay, so then we can define it further then by saying that subjectivity is to a degree a form of self-interest or selfishness. You characterize it in language however you like. That
we'd like to think our leaders have everybody else's best interest in mind, but especially in the systems that we choose to have here, there's definitely a partisanship. You're not voting for a person with an idea; it's a group. And their agenda gets pushed forward by the individual.
Okay, so I would argue then that they promote the idea of that you have freedom, so they assert that freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of choice is free. But I would argue that if all that is influenced by your subjectivity, then the question becomes, how free are you? And that the only way to achieve real freedom then, something for you to think about, is then to not have a dog in the fight. That you suspend your subjectivity, because here's the nature of it. There's no getting rid of it. It's part and parcel of being human. But who's in charge? You or your subjectivity? So who's the master, right? So in the idea of not allowing your subjectivity to influence your decision making, now you can be even-handed and discerning in any kind of judgments you make. So it's another way of saying that you would be an objective observer and a critical thinker. So to favor those two qualities, but then that's a direct byproduct of an education that fosters the individual, not turning the individual into something that better serves the institutions at large.
Now, generally speaking, I think our education system is leaning towards the subjective nature of the individual.
It's always been.
What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want out of this education? What direction are you going to go?
Okay.
And how do you then help somebody else? But we talk about freedom, and this is as we see, we have freedom of choice. I can go to any grocery store out of my choosing, and I can take any products that they bring into that grocery store. And if I don't like those products or the products that they develop, I can go to a different grocery store. But if I want to pay outside, if I want to be free, it becomes harder to choose. I can go to Source, I can find a farmer, I can make my own stuff, but it becomes more difficult. And so then you start to find out that whether I go to Sobeys or I go to No Frills, you start to notice that these products are made by the same manufacturer with under different labels, slightly different.
So we live in a place. It's not capitalism in the way that capitalism is defined. Capitalism is completely decentralized, and what you're talking about is centralization. So when it's that centralized, it's something else. It's not capitalism.
Well, we do have governance in place to try to prevent monopolies. However, they've been challenged.
And what's to prevent those with all the advantages from backroom dealings? Like I find it kind of laughable
or even working together and say, well, you can have this insurance company, this insurance company, but we're going to charge the same.
That's right. So they collude together, and that somehow they could legislate some kind of morality that'll.
Well, we've seen that in the grocery stores now, that they're going to agree to now that we've peaked up, 30-40% increases. Now they're going to try and level it off. Now 2, 3, 4, 5%. Now that we got it up there, they're not bringing it back. Everybody on inflation, nobody says we want to dial this back. They're all saying we want that 10, 12, whatever. Then it was
you know what? I want to pay what I was paying for vegetables 20 years ago. Screw that.
Yeah, but the farmer's not paying the same for gas, tractors, their land.
Okay.
And again, this centralization that's capitalism had its time and place, but now everybody's on capitalism. And
this isn't capitalism. It's this kind of centralization is the maximization of profit, and
profit
part
over
of
people,
right, and part of a system that wanted to maintain unsustainable profits, profit gains, growth, profit growth, and then we're the ones who bear the burden. I'm like, and you would think that it would be the kind of thing that would get people to outcry, go, hey, what? Here's a real great political question. What are you doing about it? Right, and of course they'll say virtually anything, but the reality is they're not doing anything about it. And just before I get too sidetracked and I forget, we were talking about education. You're talking about how it fosters the idea of being selfish. What do you want to be? What do you want to do? I have a better educational question for the individual who's entering education. What would excite you?
Right. And there are different educational models.
The Montessori methods,
private systems,
the Montessori methods based on the individual driving their intelligence and their curiosity and creativity, driving the educational process. And I know somebody that through the place that I work, that they're an educator. But they deal across different school systems, and they're like, it's always a pleasure to have to be engaged with children within the Montessori system, because they're well behaved, they're easy to get along with, and whereas within the public school system they're unruly. Even though I find that an endearing quality about humans, not little ones.
I had 3 guys show up at the door yesterday, Saturday, 2 weeks before Halloween. They said trick or treat as soon as I opened the door. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is 2 weeks advance. And they said, one kid's like, I know you got candy already. I'm like, I don't got any candy. And what makes you think I do? And another kid's like, I said, I don't got any candy. And he goes, can you give us $5 so we can buy our own candy? And I'm like, no! Like, what do you want to do for it? Because this is an entitlement. This is the kids, like, they know they can get something for free. They're cute. And they're going to go and try and get something for free. And then I was thinking about this as they asked me for $5. And then the one guy's, it would make our day. Wow.
You know what?
Kids just want something free.
It would make my day if each of you coughed up $20.
Or if they just voluntarily say, hey, mister, we just raked up your lawn. We don't want nothing for it. Or just, do something nice for somebody without the intention of getting something back. Or
well, okay, but
they've learned already.
It's all about personal gain, right?
And part of that, they know they have nothing to gain, so they dress up in costumes. I can't see them, so one guy was dressed up as Austin Matthews. Not a bad choice. But they dress up. They're going to provide me with some kind of entertainment, and they're going to get something in return. So there's still a give and take in that, and they understand that. They were only like 8, 9 years old.
Okay, that would be a weird interaction. I'd be like, just go away, go away, go away.
But these are the kids that are going to throw eggs at your house.
Yeah, I don't care.
These are kids that will break into your house at some point, or these are kids that can help you by shelving. So I'm blind, so I'm sensitive. I got to get to know the kids in my neighborhood if I can. Right? This is the next generation. These are kids are going to bury me, or help me, or
again the argument,
or torment me because I'm on the street. I can't see them.
The argument that I would make is that that what we don't do individually, that we don't create our own purpose, that would allow for us to manifest the very best of what we're capable of doing. And that if anything now it's been reduced to a meme or an advertising sales pitch for the fitness industry. And to me, it's kind of, it loses its potency because it's treated, it's only treated as though it's about self-interest and personal gain. The reality is, if you completely honor who you are, take full responsibility for your existence, mine benefits as well.
Right. Absolutely.
And then, so then if we,
how can I help you get what you want so I get what I want out of it? So I rise you up, I build you up as I go up too.
Then it's cooperative,
right,
instead of cutthroat.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But I know how many meatheads I know who are like absolutely cutthroat. They're only into it for one thing, and of course, they're
number one.
But they're so clever, they know how to say, to word it in such a way so they don't come off as being so self-serving. Because they know that that'll turn more people off.
That's right.
Right.
They won't get what they want.
Right. So now they're being disingenuous. So then the question becomes, who can you trust? And I would argue that you just start with yourself. Trust in yourself. Trust in what you can and can't do, and then you build a network based on that, because others of like mind will gravitate towards you.
You'd like to think so, but there's so much information we're talking out there. There's so much stuff out there that is designed to divide and conquer and put people in different categories. And it's acceptable in modern society. Other places you call it caste system in the India and such, where based on where you're born, maybe your education or whatever, you're assigned to a group and you have to behave accordingly. We do that financially here.
Sure, yeah, the haves and the have-nots.
Well, we agree that I can maybe buy a Hyundai and maybe you can buy a Lamborghini. I won't even go into a Lamborghini store because I don't have any place. I just know that that's not my place.
So then you've created. So unintentionally through,
but it's intentional. The signs, the advertising, the luxurious of this, and they can intentionally attract you and discourage me from going in, even for free coffee.
So then it becomes only for those who can afford it.
That's right.
So then it separates us into a two-tier system. So,
but they also
those who have it and those who don't. Right?
But people also like to convince us that some people work harder. Some people, and they do.
Another enormous lie.
Well, some people do work harder.
There absolutely are people who.
But there's nobody that works harder than the people that are forced into forced labor or whatever. They have to do things for somebody else's benefit or God's, for whatever reason that they do what they do. I have a hard time when people say, "Well, I'm entitled to my pension because I got the education." But it's a little bit not luck so much. It's positioning, which could be done by your parents. It could be doing a secret or non-secret organization helping each other out. It's a collective group of minds, but it's inside of a collective where if you get into this school, so your parents might move into that district, or even people have lied, cheated, even paid people. There was a famous case of athletes that were going to universities faking their SATs to get into better universities. Parents got jail time. I'm not getting specific.
Well, there was judges that were paid off by the prison system to incarcerate youths who with lesser crimes than they traditionally would have, and they were bought and paid for to do this in certain states in the U.S. I remember it was mainstream news, and probably about 10, 15 years ago.
I hate to spread rumors and hearsay because I don't have specific dates, and but you can look this up. There was all sorts of whole judging system where parents and people they become ward of the state because they don't have the capacity, and they just write down the paper, and all of a sudden they become ward of the state. That the assets go to the state or to some other beneficiary, and then these people go into homes where they're cared for, but everything they have has been taken from them. So it's definitely slanted against some people.
But ultimately, what drives that is that there's somebody who's gaining financially as a result.
And they're using the system to do so.
All right. So the pursuit of
justifying themselves, their position, because they're in a position of authority or responsibility or whatever, to take advantage of somebody else who is not in the same position.
So I would argue then the pursuit of the efficiency of profit is at the detriment of virtually everything else about our society and the individual. So it's the poison. You want to point the finger. You point at those who absolve themselves of any responsibility, and their only interest is their self-gain, right? So and they would argue it's their freedom of choice, it's their right to be able to do that. And I'm like, well, your right is not free. Now you're only acting out of self-interest, so that makes you actually selfish. So you're not behaving like somebody's free.
But they also might suggest that it's not my selfishness because I take whatever I've been blessed to get and I disseminate that amongst my interests. I give my churches or my organizations.
What a great crutch! What a great crutch! Hey?
But I don't want to go into the public system, so I divert my taxes into something that I support. I set up my own organization, charitable organization, to do what I want to do, because I don't want my money going into the public system because I don't like the way they spend it. So I divert that money into organizations that maybe I can influence who gets hired, maybe my family gets working in there, and we do the good work that I think. And I'm not selfish, but I am, because I'm not contributing to the public.
Well, my view is that all that, everything you just cited, only fosters further division. So,
Absolutely.
so you want
Divide and conquer.
Okay, so if we are the divided and we are the conquered. So the only way out is unity, cooperation, and we stop looking at each other as something worth expending and using that will service your ends, and start treating each other with the highest value. Look, the reason that we have tragedies of violence is all driven by ideologies, whether they're political, religious, doesn't matter what they are. And it's these ideologies, when the individual presumes that their ideology supersedes somebody else's, that those kind of horrific shit that we perpetrate against one another, that's why it's able to occur. It's why it does not go away.
So I want to talk about violence. I want to get back to violence, but I also want to talk about...
Okay, that's a great way to dovetail into the martial arts too.
Sure, absolutely. But before that, I want to finish this whole rule by the majority.
Okay, right.
But I want to talk about that. Here in the region of Waterloo municipality, the region of Waterloo, the majority is not the majority of the people. I looked into running for local, but I'm like, did I want to be a local councillor? I don't want to be a spoke of a broken wheel, because you have to collaborate between 12, 15, 20 people to get something done. So, okay, then do you want to be the mayor? Well, the mayor is good. You know, I mean, I've got some skeletons in my closet. I can't imagine what they are. But as soon as you step up, then you find
well, of course you find it, because somebody's going to point them out to you.
I've peed on city streets and stuff. I've done stuff, right? So I don't know, right? I don't know what's on camera. I don't know what people know. But then I'm like, well, then you want to be regional council, but then you're back in the same cognitive problem where it's like, well, you have to collaborate. I don't necessarily work well with people. I work well with other people. I'm a good team player. And I'm talking about martial arts, the whole authority, chain of authority and stuff like that. I respect that. I always have. You gotta work well. But then you want to go to the chair of the region. So then you look at the regional chair. The municipality has some 600,000 people, and of that we had like 35% of people vote, so roughly 200,000 people vote. Of that we had about 50% of the people that might have voted for one person. So you might have, I believe Karen Redmond, and I'm not saying she's done a bad job, I don't know if anybody can do a better job. I would have been happy to go against it, because I'm not saying she did a bad job, but I think it can be done better. Could I do better? I'd sure like to try. But you know, can I? I didn't step up. I collected like 15 out of 20 signatures. But here's the thing. 50,000 people voted for her in that position. So we're not talking about the majority. We're talking about the majority of those who vote. And then if you have 7 people in there, you're dividing that between 7 people. And whether it's likability or your own interests or whatever it is, we're talking 50,000 people amongst a population of 600,000 people that voted for the leader of this region. So we have the right to vote. People have fought and died with violence for that right to vote. And a lot of people don't exercise. They're like, well, it doesn't really matter. Yes, it can be manipulated, but we all have the right, and I think we have the responsibility to at least put your opinion down on paper on the day it's asked for. Now, violence. I've been in martial arts most of my life to avoid violence, and I've got other interests because I'm a massage and hydrotherapist, so I like anatomy, physiology. I didn't know I liked all this stuff until I was 13. And a friend of mine across the street wanted to get into Kung Fu. He was looking for some martial arts. I guess it wasn't necessarily Kung Fu. I was visually impaired, grew up as a very sheltered Christian kid. My parents wanted me to play the piano, which I did for 4 or 5 years. Absolutely hated it. I love music, but I wasn't taught how to play music. I was taught how to read music, and being visually impaired, I had large screen books that I had to get really close to with magnifying on my glasses. So I hated the whole process of it. I love music. I wish I could. I've been trying to play the guitar for 25 years, but I like the vibration. We should talk about vibration.
We'll get there.
I don't know.
Don't get ahead of yourself.
Oh, your batteries. Your SD card.
No, it's okay. We're plugged into the outlet.
Okay, cool.
We get all the power we need.
So, but here's my broken down opinion of violence. And I know you spent some time in the military, and my son was in the military, first RCR for 5 years, and he signed up to go during the conflict in Afghanistan. And I remember when you signed up, you said, well, I mean, years later, you told me why anybody signed up when it's active war, you have no idea why. And I respect that, because, and it was good for him. He did it for his own purposes, not because he wanted to defend the country or influence around the world. But everything that's ever been decided has been decided by violence.
Well, it's okay. Historically speaking, that's
Well, it's not just
accurate.
historic. It's going right now. It's going forward.
Right. No. I was just going to speak to how accurate that is. That it's a tool of convenience. That's the problem.
Now we're encouraged to use our words, and whether we can fight, with words, or we can go to court and we can fight, but that's under the rule of law. Now the rule of law, the border is where the border is because the Americans couldn't push the English back further, the War of 1812. I don't like mentioning it because now they could with a phone call. But same thing, like the only reason the French are in Quebec and anywhere else in Canada is because the English couldn't push them out. They had to deal with them. And every border around the world is there because there's violence represented at the border. The North and South Korea conflict is still going on. It's got a free zone in the middle. The police, when the police show up here to speak with me, there's a representation of violence that if they need to take me for any reason under the rule of the law, they can ask me to put me in handcuffs. They can tell me to. They can physically do it. They can confine me against my will if it's to protect the general public based on violence. They use whatever reasonable force to do that. And that goes all the way up through, it reinforces the rule of law in court systems and politics and national and international law. It's all settled by violence.
All right, now having said all that, institutions like governments and leadership have the legal right to exercise the use of violence. We do not, and the moment that we do, then they have the legal right to come after us.
How did they get the legal right to decide?
Well, guess what?
What's legal in their system?
Well, okay, so now we're talking about.
I mean, you pick any conflict. Russia has the legal right. Russia said that they have the right to Crimea, so they're going in to rescue that. They've got on their side.
But you can rationalize. Look,
absolutely.
All right. So you brought it up, and it doesn't matter where or the violence is occurring.
Right.
Those who are dominating can provide any rationalization and that will justify their use of violence and
necessary force.
Right.
To protect their way of life.
But they'll say necessary force in language, but they'll use as much force as they deem necessary to bring any situation under their control.
And I believe that there's atrocities on both sides.
100%. The moment that you resort to violence as a way of resolving problems, you fail. Mm-hmm. It failed. It failed fucking miserably because the way we measure it now is in body count. And I go, come on. Like, after 5,000 years of it, we haven't had enough, and we're still resorting to the same tactics?
I don't think we've learned much. Even if we had a larger threat, if the planet of Earth, if we got a letter, whether it's AI or extraterrestrial, we said, okay, you are under threat, we would bind together. But whether it's computers, we want to dominate over computers. If it was aliens, we would want to make them work for us. I don't think we've learned anything. We might integrate with them. We might see them as an equal if they had enough potential threat for violence that we had to deal with them. Otherwise, we would try and dominate them just like anything else.
I'm not gonna. I don't know that I entirely agree with that, but I do agree with that. It could that a global threat could galvanize us as a people.
Oh yes,
100%. So, but it's then the question becomes, what kind of unity is that? So once, so say for the sake of argument, using your example, we do dominate this whatever this existential threat is, and then now we're left to our own vices. What happens then? Then do we start breaking up again and start having internal conflicts?
Absolutely.
Well, so then it's an endless cycle of stupidity. To me,
it's always happened.
All right, so you know why? I would offer this up as to why. If anyone's curious as to why, this goes back to what drives the individuals, and then again, you can extrapolate that out to whatever's driving the individuals will drive the institutions of government, religion, whatever it might be. So if they're only interested in themselves, if what drives them is subjectivity or favoring their biases, prejudice, self-interest, opinion, expectations, this will never resolve, and it requires us to change the nature of our relationship with our subjective experience and worldview. But we don't. We favor that first, and you favor that always over objectivity. Because a critical objective thinker would never allow themselves to be stooped or drawn into any kind of fucking conflict other than one that represented a clear and present danger. There's no choice. It's either you or them. That's when somebody who's a critical objective thinker would act, and they would only act with whatever was the appropriate amount of force to bring whatever the issue was to a close. But you're not going to get that if you think it's all about you, right? And here's the problem. All of us favor our subjectivity. And again, real super clever, we like to talk about it, but we talk about it, we use the right kind of language so that we don't come off sounding selfish. But that's what we're all conditioned socially and psychologically to be. So you're brainwashed into being self-interested and self-serving, and then you act surprised when violence is at your fucking doorstep. Come on! You don't see the nature of the relationship? And the problem is people are like, well, you can suppress it. You can't suppress it. You have to change the nature of your relationship.
But even the idea of suppression.
But it's suppression of your internally. So now you're talking about the internal conflict
but I
of the
like
individual.
that. I like that tool. You were talking about the shadow on Facebook the other day, and I don't know, Nietzsche and all these guys. I'm not good with names. But you have to understand that you are an animal. I'm an animal. I'm not a shadow. Like,
okay,
I'm not a bad
right.
side for sure.
Okay, so then the ultimate expression of that is the integration of all that stuff. Because
and then choosing kindness and choosing to overcome.
No. It's not a choice. If there's full integration, that's another way of saying balance. And then out of balance, how will you behave? In the most appropriate way, given the specific details of any circumstance or situation you're confronted with. So you don't sit there in advance, go, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and then. You don't need to. That's too complicated. Now you create libraries of like behavior here. If they do this, you must do that. Wasn't it the downfall, the classical mess of martial arts that Bruce Lee talked about? It was the very same thing. So
I'm not familiar with that so much.
All right. I would just continue to say that if you look at the way that ancient Greeks viewed the individual, that you were mind, body, and spirit. In Weichiru Karate, shout out to...
I say that all the time, mind, body, spirit.
Okay, and I'd like to give a shout out to Grandmaster Jim Maloney and my teacher, Marco DiGiacia. Thanks, guys.
I appreciate you guys, but now there's a list of people I need to visit. It goes on and on.
The foundational kata of the system is of Weichiru Karate is called Sanshin. It's often interpreted as a struggle to unify mind, body, and spirit. So if you're purposeless existence, and then you're predisposed already to favoring your subjectivity, and then everything conditions you towards that subjectivity, then you are only going to favor your own self first and always. If we're looking at what's driving the individual, that's like a personal purpose, then here's a universal one: the struggle to unify your mind, body, and spirit. Another way of saying seeking balance within yourself. So that now you don't seek good experiences, only the best of what you are, and have an aversion of the more negative aspects of who you are and the negative aspects of life. That you accept them entirely, you integrate them completely, and then you are balanced. And the relationship now you have with that good or bad side of yourself, they're just aspects of who you are. You don't treat them with favor. You don't favor them over and above anyone else's. You just see them for what they are, and that they're mostly, very often, transitory. They're not
very transitory.
Right. So then you're gonna make a life-threatening decision or perpetrate an act of violence.
Life-changing.
On something that's transitory. Come on.
To yourself and others.
Right.
So we talk about the experience going out and going in. As you're talking, I'm doing the same thing you're talking about. And you're like, okay, I'm going to go into a situation, like, if they do this, I do this. In my mind, I'm like, what's my next point of conversation? What's like, and I'm deflecting, I'm using like sticky hands. In my mind, I'm deflecting, I'm going back, oh, I can come back with this, I can think about this. The struggle is internal,
right,
with myself, and then
with everyone.
And if we have, myself with yourself, exactly, and Slim over there as well, he's still part of this.
Damn, almost forgot you were here.
His energy's still part of this triangle of thought.
You got anything you'd like to add?
I don't know how much you talk off camera.
Oh, no, I haven't been talking much.
No, I know you don't. But, I mean, do you?
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, like you can't get him to shut up.
Oh my god, you got opinions?
Yeah, normally I
Does
can't
he have the right
talk.
to have opinions? I'm sorry, I hit him! I hit him! Oh my god! I've suppressed myself to violence.
You guys have touched on so many good parts of topics, like you're thinking about the way we classify each other. Like we have our own caste system, as you mentioned, economically when it comes to like, I can't even go into that store. They think I'm just there to steal a coffee. Like, there's all these things we don't really look at when it comes to personal experience.
But isn't it the point of all of this?
Yeah, why aren't we looking at personal experiences?
Well, we have to because we all come from our personal experience. And like, my education, like where I grew up, the people I've talked to, it forms a little piece of me. But then inside of that, I've got the action, I've got the watcher, and then I've got the watcher of the watcher, I've got the igma or whatever, I got the it behind me, and trying to collect that before I can get all of that into one mouth. And if I'm wise, I'll listen to 2 ears, right? But then if we had an agenda to get out of this room with a consensus between, I've got all of me and you got all of you and you've got all of you, and we have to get 3 signatures on some kind of document to say we all agree on something.
I don't think that we ever could. I think.
But we do. I mean, that's society.
Well,
that's how society's
I think
built
that.
and-
I think that it's not that you can't, but I don't think that you can reach a consensus view that everyone agrees with. That's and I think, and again, it's because we come.
I think that's fair.
I think it's the way it should be. I don't think that
Absolutely.
you're supposed. I don't think we're supposed to be agreeing on everything.
I'm pretty good about having some real life practical application to a lot of stuff. I was on the board of directors for the Massage Therapy Association of Ontario, and we represented 4,200 people at the time of 14,000 massage therapists. So like we're a third of all massage therapists. I did not like. I was opposed to the one voice policy. I could see the one voice policy. I'll express it in a second. If you were like, if it mattered to the entire country or something like this, but this is an association of professionals, right? This is not governance. And so the idea of the one voice is that once a group of people, and this is what I am in favor of, a group of us with different backgrounds, similar interests, you get presented with an idea or a concept, you get, the pros and cons, we have a debate, we have a vote. We got 3 people here. We should have a majority of a vote. I would support that vote, that process. But
okay, so that process, that very process that you're talking about, that's the very definition of direct democracy.
So then the problem I have with this whole one voice then is once I leave this, if I lost the vote, in the one voice, I have to basically say, I am Borg, I support the choice of that organization.
No, you don't. No time are you obligated to.
No, that's not true.
Just
These organizations now, they've got all kinds of obstructions inside that you cannot disseminate from the group once you leave that group. And that's why you can't represent somebody in a legal vote situation. They call it the one voice thing. You have to agree with that decision and not tell anybody if you agree or disagree with that. Every time I put up a vote, because I was elected, whether it was by 3 people or by 33% or so, it doesn't matter to me. I was elected by people, and I would like to express myself and have it recorded.
Yeah, 100%.
I need to be transparent about this was my opinion on that day. I got another opinion about that too. They were like, 10 years ago, you said da-da-da. 10 years ago, I thought differently. 10 years ago, I had different life experiences. And I'll change my opinion tomorrow if somebody tells me today why I should change my opinion. And I should. I don't respect somebody who says, I thought this 50 years ago and I'm going to continue to think that forever. That has no place in a growing society.
I completely agree. Intelligence it's a must, and it's almost mandatory for it to be allowed to evolve as the individual evolves. So if
as our group culture, the one thing we can agree on probably is that humanity really hasn't done a lot of the right thing ever. So what we're doing now, the awakening and this group and that group and coming up, we're probably still not doing the right thing. We might be doing a better job. I hope we're doing a better job.
I hope debatable.
Yeah, exactly.
Very debatable.
Everybody's got their own cause, and I'm not to pick one group or another. And I hate all of this conflict within myself and our culture. Black Lives Matter, good organization, doing good work for a short period of time. I haven't heard nothing from them. But what makes me a little bit upset is that I watch Black YouTube thought leaders, I guess, whatever, YouTube people, and they express, discuss that there's still Black slaves in Africa. Still, and it seems not to be on the agenda for Black Lives Matter. Why do their lives not matter and only the people in North America matter? I'm a person with a disability. Maybe you're a person of color, but our issues are very similar.
No, he's just a bad boy.
So like our issues are, and if you think that And then I see that in regional politics too. And I think it's wise that there's a women's Muslim group or something like that. That the women are representing their culture and their cause. I think it's a little less threatening, I guess. With modern days and whatever.
Well,
but their issues are the same as hatred is hatred is hatred, and the same issues as LGBTQ as the Jewish population these days. And we have to find our commonalities.
well, I think it's interesting that you point that out. That subjectivity only allows for you to see the differences. Remember, it's divisive by its very nature. Objectivity only allows for you to see like the actual. So given that you have all these distinct groups that you mentioned, that
All valid points.
Right, regardless of all their differences, they're ultimately still human.
And if they would work together, they would realize that these multiple groups of individual.
But their subjectivity is
right.
what prevents them from being able to acknowledge the humanity of the other. You're the other.
That's
You're
right.
Right. It's another way of saying the alien. That you're alien to me, and if you follow science fiction, we know what we do with aliens, right? So, and given, and just before we move forward, I'd like to comment on you talking about mentioning slavery. Human trafficking
still exists,
right? So, and you can you can choose your words however you like, but human trafficking and slavery are the same thing.
Yeah.
They can be used interchangeably, and we still, to me, after 5,000 years, that it's still going on means that it says to me that again we pursue everything in the worst imaginable way, because we don't. It's called metacognition. We don't ever try to understand our own thinking, which produces our own patterns of behavior. They're all they're all related. And then as an individual, you don't take the time to try to understand where those thoughts come from. I would just offer this up. There's a portion of your nervous system, it's called the default mode network. It favors you being distracted. It's the random thought generator, and it spits out random thoughts. And then people act on these random thoughts as though they're meaningful. They're transitory. If you wait long enough, they get replaced by another one, and almost always self-referential and in a negative light. 80% of those thoughts. And I'm going, here, this is what we clearly understand about ourselves. So instead of pursuing tasks and choosing activities that would foster the task positive network of your nervous system, which would predispose you to being what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi referred to as entering the flow state, where now it's a highly energized state, you have a higher pain threshold, you're actively engaged, you become everything that you could possibly become. You still favor the shit. So if you're rolling around in the shit and the feces and all the dirt, why are you expecting something beautiful out of all of that?
Well, Einstein said doing the same thing again and again, expecting different results is insanity, right? So it's the same thing. But it's what people know, it's what people understand, it's what feels comfortable.
Okay,
whether
so
you rate yourself.
All right, so isn't that then maybe perhaps the point of this conversation, or any conversation that's worth having, is to open us up to go, here, maybe we are doing things in the wrong way, and that
absolutely,
and that not only. It's not the responsibility of the institutions at large that run the show, right? It's the individual who has to do it. But until the individual decides for themselves and adopts it as, this is my purpose, my cause, and this cause serves the general membership of humanity as much as it serves me. But when you favor subjectivity and the random thought, the default mode network, it only wants you to favor you.
So we need to talk about how can we make changes, and
only as an individual can you do that.
Yeah, okay.
You want to change the country at large? Do you change the general membership?
That's right.
So if the individual changes to become more responsible, what kind of government? And say, for the sake of argument, we'll just suspend your disbelief. We'll say, for the sake of argument, that everybody suddenly does it. The entire population of fucking Canada does that. What do you think it'll do to all the institutions now that are supposed to be representative of the individuals? They all change.
Yeah.
But nobody. Yeah, right. But nobody sees the reason or the obviousness of it. That instead they focus on well, we just agree to disagree. I'm only interested in my shit. You do you, and I do me. Well, this is what I got to say to you on camera. There you go. Sorry, I just flipped a bird.
Oh, okay, interesting. I'm glad you described that for
No,
the visually impaired viewers.
No, not you, my dear friend. For all 2 people who are watching.
3 of us technically.
Well, no.
I'll watch this again. I want to know what he said.
Okay, so moving on.
No, we do have to change. But here's the other problem, though, Bob. Babette.
Betula? Whichever. I'll answer to all 3. Hey you works just as well.
So if 37, 40 million people in Canada could change individually to become a collective for the benefit of the collective, which would change all of the institutions for sure. If we all decide we're going to, whether we're all going to use cash or we're only going to use debit, all of a sudden like, everything has to change because we are the consumer. We drive it. We drive it.
Right.
They tell us what to do. But then we become a collective. Now we have to decide how things are going to change, and then we have to administer that going forward. Are we going to make any real changes, or are we going to fall into the same trap and then start setting up a new governance under a new
All right, I think
with new flaws.
Right. I think that no matter what we do, that it'll always be problematic.
So,
Look, this is the reality of being alive. One of the things, again, that never gets discussed, but is completely true, is that life is problem solving.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then you shouldn't presume that somehow that there's a vision out there that resolves every issue that's standing.
Right.
No matter what we choose to do and how we choose to do it, there are going to be problems associated with that.
There's opportunity and there's challenges, and the challenges present, like we develop with challenge. And I don't care if we're talking physically, like gravity. People say, well, gravity's pulling me down. But gravity gives me something to resist against. I pull up my coffee mug, my muscle gets stronger, the tendon gets tougher, and the bone gets denser. And without gravity, we would all be taller. I could throw a Volkswagen throughout the universe, and with more gravity, I'd be crushed. I wouldn't have the opportunity to survive.
I'm completely in agreement with with what you're saying.
But we also challenge how we challenge ourselves. So, we challenge ourselves with education. We get the diplomas, degrees, and then we up and up. So we need challenge to develop.
100%. So you can characterize it another way of saying the struggle. It's the value of the struggle. The individual is defined by the struggle, and the struggle is almost uniform and universal. It doesn't matter what you do. Anything that, as you described, is challenging. Now you can expect to struggle with it. So, for the purposes of mastery. So then the ultimate expression of who we are then becomes an act of self-mastery.
So inside of the challenge, it becomes how you feel about the challenge. If you hate math, you're going to throw up a brick wall and you're never going to call it. I hate this. Or if you're like, how do I figure this out? Do I go over? And being visually impaired, I've had all kinds of challenges. You've had your own challenges. But I approach things like how? How can I and if I hit a wall, I'm like, well, maybe I go this way, maybe go up, maybe I go under, maybe I try and break away. And you watch Shawshank Redemption. 25 years, right? 25 years to get out of there. I get that. I respect that. And I do the same thing because sometimes, whether it's martial arts, sometimes it goes on the back burner. I've quit for a period of time. Downhill ski racing, I was visually impaired and I had to decide whether I was going to keep doing it totally blind because I couldn't see my guides anymore or quit. I still do, but it washes, right? And massage therapy, sometimes it's my influence, it becomes my priority. Sometimes it's on the back burner, just kind of plug and play. I do stand-up comedy, same thing, that comes to priority. And if I can't get somewhere else, I put that a little bit away, but I just always keep plugging away in all my interests. But all my interests I got 5 fingers, but they all kind of point in the same direction, right? Like all these things are expressions and self-learning, challenging myself. And I think it does better me as I go. And I want to evolve and change and to be changed by it. Whether it's martial arts, I tell everybody, 2 choices today. Like, you are not here to change the martial arts. You're here to be changed by the martial arts. And if we approach that, schooling too, you're there to be changed by it into something else. But we got to be careful how we educate.
Yeah, what you're turning them into.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. And from a physical point of view, I'm disappointed that we don't teach people how to musculoskeletal stuff, how to use their shoulders, how to use their knees. That stuff is actually very easy. We talk about bending your knees. But they don't say how to bend your knees, and mechanically there's so much stuff that I've done my own thought on. I've been to the anatomy lab 4 times this year, and I just find all of this stuff fascinated. They open up the anatomy to healthcare providers, and I'll take every opportunity I get a chance to go. But
You're talking about the Cadaver Lab?
The Cadaver Lab.
Oh, I love that
Yeah,
place. That place is so weird.
I've been there 4 times this year already, and I like the educational environment, the learning of it, because like I'm there with first, second, third, fourth year university students. I'm there with osteopathists, physiotherapists, chiropractors. I'm probably the only person that's gone more than once this year. But I think it's a great place to learn and study and be in the teaching and educational environment. I just absolutely love it. But I wish it was more part of our, once we learn stuff, we would disseminate that information back down. But we have to filter it, what's the most important things, I guess. But we can avoid so many other problems. Like we see so many problems with the structural problems of poor posture, people straighten up, but it's not working. If it was working, social services, if they were working, we'd have less problem. If we had one less overdose last year than we had the year before, I'd agree it worked, but it's not working. We have to change how we're doing things.
Well, I think part of the problem is too that when children get, when we introduce children into the educational system, part of their education, which doesn't exist currently, is them learning about how they physically move, and that because so think about, I remember this from school, like so you think about the nature of the spine where it connects to the pelvis and the different planes of movement of the pelvis, that if you actually paid attention to how your feet struck the ground, how you stepped, so your gait and the form of each footstep that you took, that you could correct postural issues
over time. Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
I've been doing this for 30 years.
Okay,
but when I started learning how to do the gait, when I studied gait, I couldn't walk. And when you take any activity and you start to break it down into different components, like you lose the flow, I guess you would say, right? The freedom of it.
But don't you eventually acquire that by
yes.
So then at a young age, when you see that in a child, you go, "Here, do you understand why, like that, if you're doing this, what kind of impact that's having on you? Try this. When you step, put more of your weight on the tissue pad underneath the front of your foot, and just kiss the ground with the heel of your foot. And if
like
you
attack on the thumb.
Yeah, like just long enough for balance, but you're not placing all your weight on the heel.
No.
You keep all the weight forward on the foot. You do that, you'll suddenly resolve or prevent any low back issues, pelvic related issues.
Along with that, if you soften your knees, it'd be the same thing. Because now you're putting, if you
no hyperextension of the knee. Now the knee's always slightly bent. So when you say soften the knee,
that's right.
It allows them
unlocked position.
Right. So then it allows.
But this is going into muscle, because if you stand on the heel, that transfers force bone to bone to bone. That's a very passive stance. It's an active stance to go on the ball of your foot using the calf muscles. Bend your knees, use your thigh muscles. That takes a lot of pressure off the low back, and you can prevent a lot of problems.
Okay, so again, it speaks.
I would say that's one of the fundamental things.
It speaks to like the value and importance of introducing that and early.
But we don't teach our kids that because the teachers, they don't know that.
Okay, but
parents don't know that.
But here's the thing: when I was in school, they had physical education.
Absolutely.
So why don't they expand on that? And there are countries in the world where they only allow half the day for academics, and the other half of the day, the school day, is meant for physical activity and learning about having a physical education. I'm going. This would produce a better individual. So
when you were in grade school, did you ever in kindergarten? Did you have a nap?
I can't remember that far back.
We had to take a towel. We had nap day. We had time out. It wasn't a punishment time out. This is nap time. This is self-reflection. Whether it's just reading time. This was a nap time. This was 15, 20 minutes. Put your towel on the floor and lay down quiet.
Dude, I got like an ounce of like memory, and you're trying to put a 40-ouncer into it.
Slim, did you ever get a rest time when you're
a bunch of loss?
Oh no!
Where'd you go to school?
What's it called?
City, town, province, country.
Yeah, no, KW.
Okay.
Yeah, from here, we didn't have nap time. We had an indoor jungle gym, which I saw somebody fall off of.
Can you
imagine?
Trauma. Nothing more traumatic.
PTSD. I'm not
I'm
negating PTSD, and it's real. It's absolutely real. I'm just saying that our sensitivity has gone way down over the years. I think about the World War II vets, and we talked about violence and stuff like that. They talk about PTSD. Like these guys got dropped off on D-Day, and maybe in 6 months we'll pick you up. Like, they can't forget, they can't remember what happened, but you know, that was a very traumatic event in your life, and you're lucky that that was one of the biggest, maybe it wasn't probably the biggest traumatic, but it's memorable because we're very sheltered. We're very cared for, but again, if you eliminate some of the challenges, you have the opportunity to get better, stronger for it.
Because we don't teach people what life really is.
But that comes with responsibility. But because of the insurance, because of the governance, we have something to protect. And you know, my liability while you're in my home, I got to make sure everything's safe for you, rather than saying,
well, but here's the nature of life. The nature of life is it's a risk.
Absolutely,
and you can do everything correct and nothing works out. And conversely, you can do everything wrong and it all works out. So it's a paradox. So you don't get to cherry pick that, like, well, we're going to create a safe society and everybody's going to be...
But we think we do.
Well, it's delusional thinking.
I was involved in disabled downhill ski racing and all the way up to the Paralympic level. I got to the national level, which is basically pay to play. But for 10 years, I tried to be a Paralympian. And so when you get to the races, they've got fences, they got rules, the international rules. The blind person gets to go down the course 2 or 3, times before anybody else gets on the course, 15, 20 minutes, and you get a chance to look at it because, you got to quiet on the course. All these kind of rules to protect us. When I trained, like, racing was the safest thing I ever did in disabled racing, because when I train, I go to local ski hills, and it's like the Ontario Hill's only like 50 feet wide. We can't afford to close off the whole thing. We don't have netting for the whole thing. You're going to be on one side. So every turn was always on the side of the trees. There's always trees right there. You're always taking a risk with it. You overcome that by training and skills, and you have some kind of system kind of to do this. But to think that it's safe, to think that anything is safe, but with liabilities and such, we try to set it up and we try to protect people, but people don't necessarily need to be protected. You shouldn't be able to live 50 or 80 years by being stupid.
Natural selection should be.
Natural selection is a real thing.
Let it take the dummies.
I've got a horrible subject to broach, I guess, right now. But is suicide ever the best option?
You know what? I think that's a tricky subject.
It's a very tricky question, and I got this loaded.
I think that I'll just offer this up that depending on who you ask, time
and place.
Yeah, right. It runs the gamut of.
So the reason I brought this up is because the kid Feldman or whatever that run down the Muslims in London a couple of months ago, right?
Right.
The day of, he was very extremist, and he's saying, I did what I did, and I want the world to know why I did it, and I thought about it a long time, and I think it's going to be now or never. And now that he's on the stand, he said, I had a horrible childhood, my mother didn't love me, and I da-da-da. And now he's saying that he thought about, killing himself. Suicide. And that made me think, had he have killed himself, which I would never support, and before he did what he did, we needed to care for him. But now that he's done what he did, we have to find suitable justice and penalties for him to find some kind of closure for the family that he involved. But had he have killed himself, he would not have negatively affected that entire family and the culture and the society in Canada that was changed at the moment he decided to do what he did. He wouldn't have been here. So in that case, I hate to say it, but it would be better for him to have taken his own life than to have affected other people with his shit.
All right.
My first swear word in the...
It's okay.
Sorry, I want to interject.
Please
Strange timing you brought that up, because just the other day was my friend's birthday, and he wanted to talk about 9/11. Unfortunately, it was such a scary topic, because him and I were saying, okay, you're faced with a wall of fire, and you're at one of the top stories. You're not taking the stairs, you're not taking the elevator. What do you do? He was like, I would be terrified.
What can you do? Freeze. Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't freeze, you would burn.
That was bad.
Freeze until you burn.
Yeah, so
but when we talk about the sympathetic versus parasympathetic, sympathetic's your fight, flight, but it's not fight and flight. It's fight, flight, and freeze, because that's another scared stiff. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, like, it's terrible to consider it, but at least for those people, it seemed like a much better option than burning alive.
To jump.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you a chance. You don't know what you're going to land on, but you know what's going to happen here, I guess.
And it would be quicker. Like, there's a lot of really terrible circumstances we could be led into. That's why people are so paranoid and concerned. We need all these rules around keeping people safe. But
not even on the same level, but I did a 220-foot bungee jump. And the thing I learned about 220 feet is so you run out of air. Right? It wouldn't be, and then it's very fast. But that's a long way down.
You free fall at 118 feet a second, right? So
Okay, so I did 220 feet, so it was like 2 seconds. Maybe
Well,
like 2 seconds. is a lot.
you're going to need a little bit of time to accelerate.
Yes, yeah.
What do they call it? To reach terminal velocity.
Yeah.
Right. So it might take 5 seconds.
It was fast. And then people say, "Well, you're visually impaired. You didn't know how high you were." I'm like, "Bull crap!"
Oh yeah, because I can't feel the air rushing around.
And I didn't walk up the quarry for 45 minutes and up the fire escape and then across the thing to get the sense of the air. A month later, my son was 16 at the time. We went to Canada's Wonderland. They do a 160-foot swing, right? So then you go on the swing and you're going back up, and the lights that were there when I could see. The lights that were above me from all the rides and such, and beside me, all of a sudden they get smaller and smaller, and then the only lights up here now, like they're all down there. Don't tell me I didn't sense that I was high. I mean, I was tall. I wasn't high at the time.
I'd just like to offer up something with regards to, because you brought up suicide in a very specific case and how it might have better served
the public. Negatively affected.
So I again. Circumstance, much like everything else, dictates whether or not the course of action would have been appropriate, and you can only achieve that level of understanding when you're objective. Dare I say that if he would have been trained to be an objective thinker,
think about others as well as himself,
none
he
of
may
it
not have done what he did,
including the suicide, including the option for suicide. None of it would have happened. He would have found a better way. He would have sought real help, right? He would have made it his purpose. Here, I'm presented with this problem, and what he took was a selfish route. And I don't mean selfish in that it was just him lashing out, and it was a way for him to express his frustration and his pain and his hurt.
It was totally inappropriate.
I completely agree.
But I fear for these people. Like when I teach martial arts to kids, and I've over the years, like I'm just a very small part of Kitchener Kicks. But I've seen hundreds, maybe thousands of kids over the 10, 15 years I've helped out there. And I worry about each one of these kids because they make life-changing decisions, whether I carry a knife, because if you're going to carry it, you either have to use it or take the threat of it being taken away and used on me. So don't carry it. Don't have it with you. Don't have it as an option. But we have to care about these people up until the moment that they do something negatively affects them or society or other people. Because I worry about their lives. Now they're in trouble. They're up against society's rule of law, and they're contained against their will. And if you thought you were going to be the toughest guy in the street, now you're going to go to prison, and you're going to find a lot tougher guys, and you're going to become tougher outside of that because of those challenges. And what are we creating? Is it really, that's another subject too, like is it really restorative? Is it really rehabilitative, or is it just doing time? And are we making people worse?
I think that you could have an outreach to people who come from, I gotta be really careful how I say
Of course we do, very sensitive, yes.
Right, that we need to be sensitive to people who come from impoverished backgrounds, and that they need to know at an early age that there are options. And all I mean by that is that there is help. That they don't have to face their struggle alone. Because here's the thing: struggle is only advantageous when it exists just outside of what you're capable of doing. Because then you can muster the inspiration to overcome that struggle. But when it's enormously beyond what your abilities, becomes overwhelming and debilitating, and it contributes to the problem.
So you can have progressive achievements that reinforce the idea you can do a little bit more. You take a challenge, you do a little bit more.
Well, but this is what I'm saying, that if there was a public outreach so that people who are in those same kind of circumstances who are disadvantaged, that they have options, that they're not entirely
Again, I'm
left
concerned
to
that
the
the
wind.
social services isn't working because
I was referring more to like programs within education itself, but you don't.
All kinds of them. Reach out for help. There's help out there, but you know what? The help is challenged because it's not real. You're talking somebody who's disadvantaged, talking to somebody who is advantaged, somebody who's in another opportunity, or even in a peer support group that requires funding and money by other people. But ultimately, like I've had some counseling. I go to it, it's like, these are my problems, or hey, you're really hard on yourself. I'm like, yeah, I can tell you about all the good stuff I've done, but I don't need help with any of that. So in an hour, you know, I'll spew everything on the table, blah, but you got to be able to put me back together so I can walk out of here with some coherence, right?
I would argue that you're the one that's got to put yourself back together.
Absolutely.
And that perhaps maybe
With help, sure.
Don't get me wrong. I advocate for talk therapy. It's a great tool, particularly when you're feeling overwhelmed.
I like it when it's more organic as opposed to structured, or even worse if it's court ordered. I don't know if that's all.
Was that your experience?
No, I never had those experiences, but I've seen those experiences. But my clients, with my friends, having conversations that matter, people that really care for each other, that really matters. Because when I went to talk to a professional, the professional's like, well, here's a pamphlet for this social organization. Here's a pamphlet. I can give you a referral to this person, or you can take medication. I'm not saying medications don't have their place as a tool. I don't like when external things become a dependency. Orthotics, glasses, laxatives, anything.
Right, it becomes a crutch. Right.
Well, yeah, and because now here, if we think about the physical, fundamental physicality of this, like my ideas, what I expose my senses to, what I see, what I hear, what I smell, what I taste, what I think about, that's an electrical current. There is no connection between one electrical current and the soma, or the cell of the next the nerve cell. It's a chemical space. It's a liquid space. So there's neurotransmitters in between there. So my idea from one changes the chemistry to create the next electrical complex. So what you think about here about those are things, it's electrical to start with, it changes your chemistry. So what we give people medication because they have a chemical imbalance. We start to do cognitive therapy, maybe we're getting better at that. I'm not suggesting that's not a good thing. But you know, like, I myself personally, because of my struggles with vision impairment and not achieving some of the things I wanted to achieve, maybe I've got body language, I'm looking away from the camera, like, I didn't want medication. I don't want to go down.
No, I think that creating that kind of
I have
dependency is
self-medicated.
dangerous.
I use what used to be illegal drugs. Now they're on the legal side. I can't believe how legal things have gotten. I can't believe shatter's legal. Like, I mean, pot was good enough in the 70s, 80s, or whatever, 90s when I got involved. But I self-medicate sometimes too much. I'm taking a depressant to cure my depressants. I'm taking alcohol, and it's changing my chemistry. But I'll tell you, the one thing that's really helped me through all of this has been exercise. Although I'm quite lazy, but these challenges, that it's a positive challenge, negative challenge, it's the day and night, it's all of these things that go to create my balance, my understanding of my shadow, my id, my action, the watcher, all of these kind of things in society. I don't want medication. I don't seek the guidance of my doctor. Oh my God, because he can only give me medication, maybe psychological help, and or physical, down to physiotherapy, which I understand a lot of myself, and or then surgery. And if I can prevent something, and okay, here's a good idea. This is a physicality. I'm taking it back away from the emotional things and maybe getting too excited myself. Something simple like an orthopedic test, you'd be familiar with. This is called Kellogg's, this is called empty can. I'm dumping out on the empty can. This is negative for the shoulder impingement. Doctors, physiotherapists, surgeons, they're looking for impingements. When I do that, I'm like, I look at how somebody lifts their arm up. If they lift their arm up like this and I bend their elbow, I'm like, this is a functional empty can movement every time. If you do that again and again, like we talked about with Einstein, if you do that again and again, you don't expect repetitive strength, that's insanity. So we have to change that action to come like this. And I don't want to say throw the can over your shoulder like you don't care about any of the environment. We have to be responsible, but this is much better. All the twists is in the wrist when it comes to martial arts. There's so much mechanical intelligence in martial arts that I found that I've extrapolated on from my anatomical studies and stuff like that. But it's and it's the same thing when we talk about whether it's suicide, murder, crime, of opportunity, cognitive people that are in disadvantage in small spots. The time to change that is at the beginning of the day, the beginning of the educational phase. Like, we have to interject early. And the day somebody picks up a knife, it might even be a couple of days too late. I don't know, because they feel the need to do that or whatever, right? But we got to go back. We got to look for the problems, and the real solutions are way before that. And the things that we do again and again and again, hoping for a better solution, is not going to work.
I would only add to what you're saying. I would only offer up this. I had a very dark period in my my own life, where psychologically I was.
No doubt, I've always worried about you.
I was truly wounded, and what resolved that for me was the integration of meditation into living my life.
Medication is very important. Meditation. I'm sorry.
Meditation.
I pronounced it wrong.
Right. Not medication. I don't self-medicate. I don't consume alcohol.
No, actually, you're
or
really good
drugs.
on these things.
Yeah, and in terms of meditation, I always initiate the day first with meditation. I haven't missed a day in 15 years.
A lot of people say that helps to set your day. Other people even say want to set your agenda at the night so that you're thinking properly. So in the morning you can start the day properly.
What I discovered was how much it's meditation in terms of what it does for the nervous system. It conditions it, it trains it to be present in the current moment. So then now it allows for you not to be overwhelmed by, because it provides emotional maturity where now emotions aren't influencing your judgment, your ability to make decisions. It allows for you cognitively to be able to see clearly instead of being clouded by the random thought generator, your emotions. And two, allows for you to have a respite from you. It gives you a moment to pause. And then in that, what I found was I still have issues, but most of them are largely ameliorated. You don't have to be a slave to your biology. You can be master of it. And what opens the door to that mastery is meditation. And I'll tell you, in terms of like particularly the last 15 years, I've evolved in a personal way where now I'm not troubled by the nature of reality, and in fact I'm more enthusiastic. That was the byproduct that I wasn't expecting, an enthusiasm for more of this, because I realized how much of a benefit there is. But here's the rub. It worked for me, but
that's right.
I can't impose it on anyone else. And the only time it works is when you make the active decision to integrate it into your life. And then you spend a lot of time trying to find a methodology that actually works for you personally. But everybody can do it. So anyone who tells you, no, I can't, they're just excusing themselves.
Yeah, they don't want to spend time with themselves.
Right.
And this goes back to my idea where I thought about the kindergarten nap time, just taking a time. And I don't know if you said something about like an escape from you, but it's also like it's an opportunity to get to know you and to be in you, right? And sometimes it's forced. I was thinking about in prison, you said you can't force anybody else, but in imprisonment they self-confinement, right? So, and people go crazy. It's been prisoners of war have experienced times of solitude, and they suggest it's not it's against humanity to confine somebody.
Solitude under duress is negative, but
oh yes, of course,
right. But active solitude, which I regularly am a participant in. It's calming, it's peaceful.
I've heard and I should take this to heart myself, because I've heard the expression that if you're too busy for 20 minutes of meditation, you need 2 hours of meditation. Right?
Well, it's a Taoist expression that we're everybody can meditate for 20 minutes, and those who express no desire for that, they need to do it for an hour. Right? Mm-hmm. I can't do it for 20 minutes. So you should do
the
it.
Morning might be a good time to do it, but also the afternoon could be a good time, or the evening, any time to unplug.
Look. It's so adaptive. You have to find what works for you. So, and again, in terms of methodology, it's just, for me, it's what works. It's how I start my day. And then my day revolves always around it being the first step, right? So as soon as I get out of bed and I clear the cobwebs out, I go right into meditation, right?
What time's your day start?
Because I work afternoons,
right.
So I'm usually up anywhere between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, you've got some time in the morning. Other people might have more time in the evening. I know for me,
it's just what worked because of that time. But
your lifestyle,
but even when I used to work like 9 to 5, I would be in bed at like 10 p.m. so I could get up at like 5:30, so I could have enough time to do it before I actually went to work.
Personal discipline,
right?
For a lot of people, like including myself, I get, especially through COVID. Like I found that I was during watching the news, got me all excited watching the news, and it's designed for that. They pick things that it kind of get you excited, to catch your attention, to keep you watching TV for one reason or another. And part of it's just the advertisements and buy the things that they support or support them. Part of it's just to think maybe what maybe we should think in this world or whatever. I don't know where I'm going with that. So I found I was drinking more. I'd have a beer all day. I wouldn't have a beer. All of a sudden, as the news comes on, bang, I'd have a beer. So it changes the way I think before I go to bed. And then when I get up, it's like, oh my God, my bus comes at 8 o'clock. I got to get out of here. I got to get me and my guide dog. I got to get ready, chasing my day. It can be difficult to find that time, and then you pick up to see, like, what am I missing out on? Fear of missing out, maybe, or the catching up because I'm really slow, being visually impaired, blind, a person with a disability. I fall into a person with a disability. I'm not a different ability. I don't have superhuman other things that balance it out. Like, I've lost vision, which is a huge disability. Now I've got other things I can cope with and use to my advantage, and hopefully my tolerance and my acceptance and my intelligence, helps me deal with a lot of stuff. But throughout the day, I'm like, what do I got to catch up on? So I get my email. As soon as you get your email, all of a sudden it's like, I got to do this, I got to do this. Oh, I forgot about all the things I had to do yesterday, which I couldn't do from last week, which I couldn't do from the month before. And it is challenging to get off of the Ferris wheel. But anytime people ask me if I meditate, I'm like, I don't know if I meditate or vegetate. Sometimes, like, I'm a minimalist. I try not to drink too much, and I try not to drink for the wrong reasons, and I try not to smoke too much. I take a little puff. That changes my attitude. I can exercise. I think differently because that electrical change and the chemical changes things. I get very optimistic about things I can do, grandiose ideas. I want to do the massage and hydrotherapy. I'd like to teach martial arts, exercise, preventative, all kinds of things. I like to work with seniors and kids because to me it's all the same. People want to specialize, but to me it's all the same. It's people at any stage. And then I get out into the real world, and I'm like, geez, I go to the bank, I don't have enough money to do this, or I try to get on the computer, and I can't broadcast this because I don't know enough how to do the editing, so I'm learning, I'm trying to do that. Then I lose my data. I lost the whole 2 gigs of data. I spent $2,000, and found out I gave them the wrong drive.
Shit happens,
It
right?
does. And I gotta say, that's okay, because I'm still working for the good cause of somebody else's benefit. I'm doing this for me, this conversation was for me, but I'm doing it to share time with you and encourage you and hopefully your listeners as well. You've often, I like your expressions on Facebook. Sometimes I often share them, but I even like them. Sometimes I comment on them. I like them. And, there's the grand masters, where somebody says, master, I'm discouraged. He said, if you're discouraged, encourage somebody else.
Right.
And I've been trying to do that. And I'm like, encouraging somebody else is still discouraging, so I'm still not getting where I want to go. But where do I want to go? None of it matters.
It does matter. That's wrong.
It does and it doesn't.
No. Okay, the paradox is that as much as it matters, it equally doesn't matter.
Right.
But where's your focus?
Right.
Where do you want to focus? Do you want to focus on it not mattering? Okay, then it doesn't matter.
My focus is equal 365 degrees, but not just that way.
Okay, so then maybe it's the middle, which cancels out both extremes. So then what are you then? Then you're balanced. You're constantly, in your professional capacity, you work to resolve muscular imbalances so that you create balance in the way the muscular system works in the body. But you don't have the wherewithal to sit there and seek balance in your own existence.
Not true. Of course I do.
Well, I'm just saying.
I go to one extreme, then I go to another extreme, so I can understand where's the middle.
That's a seesaw. You're not balanced. Balance.
And I'm not that extreme.
Okay. Balance is the surfer on the board riding the wave. When you're talking about the seesaw tipping one way or the other,
it's bipolar.
You're flipping from one extreme to the other. Where I'm going to use your seesaw
analogy.
I'm sure that if you have 2 people on the seesaw, what they actively try to do is find that spot where the beam just balances.
But that's not fun on the seesaw. It's fun to go up, me, you, me, you, me, you.
But in this case, we're not talking about that.
Right.
We're talking about, so in that balanced place, how much greater would your appreciation be of the fun?
But you know what, you're right, the seesaw, right? Would it be fun for you and I to sit on a seesaw to try and find balance, where I breathe, you breathe, and we are in balance?
And you challenge
how long can we stay level? It might be fun. It might be fun, but it wouldn't be. But you know what? We've taken away the seesaw at the school because it's not safe for kids. I went on one seesaw. I went right over then. I broke my glasses. I ran home crying to my mommy, who was there, by the way. But we've taken away the seesaw because it's dangerous for kids.
Okay, all I would say is, again, you can try to insulate reality and society to a degree where now there's no risks, and it's not threatening anymore. But that's, again, completely diluted. You can step out on the street and get hit by an automobile. You could confuse medications and unintentionally poison yourself. Look, life is about experiencing life, but the question becomes, how would you choose to experience it? Would you choose to experience it from going from one extreme to another, or from a balanced place? And in that balanced place, it will allow for you to have a greater appreciation then of the extremes, and then to have the wherewithal to go, this is the moment where you take all the risk, right? It's a calculated risk, and it's dangerous, and this could go very horribly, or it could be really fucking cool.
So
right?
Some of the most the moments in my life where I felt like I was actually alive was when I was downhill ski racing. But same thing in running racing or martial arts fighting. It's all the same thing. The person that takes the most risk, you have the most to lose, but you have the most to gain. And being totally blind, I try to stay in balance, so I can go this way. I'm trying to find that balance on many hills. And you say, well, you're visually impaired. Maybe you're on the nice gentle hills. I was on every hill in Ontario, several in Quebec. The Rocky Mountains, and several into BC as well, and some very steep areas. Trying to find that balance when a lot of things are against you. Trying to stay on that edge of control.
Nobody said it was going to be easy.
No, but I was afraid.
It's okay to be afraid.
Well, it was okay to be afraid.
Don't allow the fear.
You got to attack the hill, and you got to have confidence, and you got to have faith in my guide, because I was using black duct tape on my goggles, and I had a megaphone, so I'm following their sound. I'm following that sound. We're not tied together. We're not, and if I can, it's good. I've gone off the track. And I've gone through trees. I broke my helmet. I've got a little scar on my face there from hitting a snow gun. Second snow gun, the other one right on the head, on the chest. And I was laying on my back going, and then I'm like, you know what? This is what my body wants to do. I'm going to voluntarily support what my body wants to do. And my son was on the megaphone. He's my guide when he was 18. And I wanted to let him know I was okay. But all I could do was just flap my hand like this, like, I'll be okay. He's on a megaphone in a private resort in Collingwood going, fuck! 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 The race director comes over with another, innocent bystander, a do-gooder, sees this blind skier, orange fluorescent black letters on my bib, and I'm crawling out of this, this no ski area. It's pretty obvious nobody would ever go where I went. And he's like, "Are you okay? There should be a fence here." And he goes, "You should complain." I'm like, "Look, man, I'm on a disabled ski racing team. We're here by the grace of the membership. I'm not creating any paperwork hassle because there's lawyers on the board. And what do you mean a blind skier is here? It's not good for our liability." And he was like, "I'm going to complain." And I'm like, "Please don't." He's like, "On," because he's going to go do good in the world. And appreciate that kind of person. However, the next person, who happened to be the race director of and I don't know if he knew who I was or I was on the team or whatever. He goes, "Are you really okay?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. So then I went in for an hour for lunch, and I come back out. This is the thing, getting back on, experiencing challenge, disappointment, trauma. Somehow find it inside yourself to get over what you saw in the playground when you were in grade 3. To get back, you got to do grade 4. You got to learn. Maybe you tell a kid, "Hey, don't do that because I seen something bad happen last time," right? And I came back onto a ski hill, and it was on a steep hill on the one side of, come to me. And then so I go to my coach, we ski down, I stop, and now I'm scared of everything. And I said, "Coach, if something happened, but nobody got hurt, however, there were witnesses, would you like to know?" He's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "I hit a snow gun." He goes, "Well, that happens." "Who saw it?" I said, "The race director." He goes, "Okay, well, we'll see how that goes." I'm like, I don't know what to do now, because now I'm afraid, like every little bump, because it could be the last time. And I've gone over cliffs where my last thought was, I've done this before. Feet first. Like now I have to think, I can tell you story after story. I'm in myself at those moments, and that was not when I thought I was alive, by the way. I'll get to that in a second. That was when threatening my life. The coach said to me, he said this exactly. He said, "If you get through this race course, I think it'll give you a lot of confidence." I'm like, "Well, what's going to give me the confidence to go up there to take the if I get through here?" And that day, I was coming through, and I also wore a jock too. I'm going left and right. I came up, and I hit 3 gates. It goes left, right, left. and I actually was a right, left, right. And as I hit that, I got it in the cup. I did not know there were bystanders on the side of the hill, and they laughed. They didn't laugh at me. They laughed at the circumstance because I just took it in the nuts.
Right.
I snapped. I slammed on the brakes. I'm sick and tired of people laughing at me. Like, I was out there. I was embarrassed. Like, I'm out there trying my best, and I don't want to be a participant. I wanted to be a winner. I wanted to be a Paralympian. I wanted to be a champion. I wanted to be the only one in the world, the best in my class to do it. I was sick and tired of it. Coach took me aside. He goes, look, there's no place for that on this team with those kind of outbreaks and stuff like that. And he's right. But I lashed out because I couldn't fix something inside, so I pushed it on somebody else. It was horrible. But when I was skiing and I was out west, a couple times I'd go over the pitch, out of the blue, guys like, pitch! And you go, because there was a megaphone, so like at a certain height, I can calibrate how high that is. And as the megaphone drops and they're telling me terms and I hear like ice under their feet, I get tons of noise. Or they're like, and this is why I used a megaphone, because that tells me there's bumps without them having to tell me there's bumps. They're like, pitch, and it's and turn and turn and turn, and I'm in balance. The very next second, I could go over something. I could go off a cliff. The Rocky Mountains are 14,000 real feet up, and I don't know exactly where I am in time and place. And I go over that cliff, and I'm in balance for that moment in time. And I'm like, this is living, because life is so fast that you have to slow things down inside. The time changes. And I know the same thing for a gentleman who's JTF, and he's probably done lots of stuff, PTSD. I do massage therapy once a year when I get kindly invited. I'll go back this year for the Winter Sports Clinic for disabled military veterans. A lot of that's cognitive, some physical. This gentleman, JTF, he came back from Afghanistan. He probably spent some time in Iraq too. And he spent 6 months in the bush, didn't even tell anybody he was home because he needed to recalibrate his thoughts, to re-enter society. He races Ducati motorcycles, because at 300 kilometers an hour, he finds that speed that captivates his every molecule in his mind and body and spirit into the moment, right? The second, where everything you're doing right now, you can slow things down because everything's going so fast. And that's one thing that I really liked about ski racing, is because I had a lot of emotions about losing my sight. I went blind on a ski hill long before, like within 3-5 years. My life's greatest fear, I knew I was going blind from the time I was 9, 12, it settled in when everybody's getting their licenses and I can't. They're going off to college, university, take different trades that I can't do. But by the time I was 36, 37, I went totally blind on, I guess it was 35, on the ski hill. And then 5 years later in life. But as soon as I started skiing, I couldn't think about anything other than this second matters. And the more, and idleness is your brain being idle is the devil's workshop. The more time you have, the more distractions you have, the less challenges we have. That's why parents put their kids into music and dance and martial arts and swimming, right? So as soon as they have time, I talked to Indian cab driver. He said, my kids can't come home and smoke pot because my parents are there, grandparents are there. They can't go to their friend's place because their grandparents are there. Keeping your kids busy in positive ways, seeing things that are positive, hearing things that are positive, that includes your family time at home too, right? Yelling, screaming amongst family and all that kind of stuff, right? Being positive, but anytime you got time, something gets in there and changes your electrical idea, the chemistry, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, I would, in response to everything you just said, that it's clear to me how much strength it developed, strength of character, right? So if there's a takeaway from the experiences, it's how much they contributed to the strength of the personality or the character that you identify as, right? That you can, right?
Yeah. But inside that's a pathology too, because I'll tell you that I'm blind and people are like, you can't see. I'm like, yeah, but I was a downhill ski racer. He's like, wow. So I gotta be careful with that identity, because people say my disability doesn't define me.
It does.
It does. It certainly changes who I am, how I think, and what I do on a minute-to-minute, day-to-day basis. What I think is possible,
but it's.
But because of how I've overcome some of those challenges, it also creates, I tell everybody, the impossible becomes possible, and the becomes easy. The hard becomes easy, and I get that from the martial arts training, because the martial arts really is, it's military arts, but we're leaning towards the art and then the sweetness of the struggle, the efficiency that comes through being tired by being physically challenged. It accesses certain areas of your brain that you can't get to other ways. You'll get it through playing hockey if you really, really try and you really push. I was doing running racing, getting ready for my brown belt test, and a gentleman was he was a marathon racer. He wanted me to race. I just wanted to jog. And he's like, the only thing that separates the people at the front in the 5K and the ones at the back is the ones at the front are willing to struggle more. They're willing to suffer more. But Andrew Huberman, do you know who he is?
Yeah, I know
Okay,
exactly.
he's a neuroscientist on YouTube. I mean,
I love his podcast.
I love his stuff too. I don't listen to the whole podcast. 2 minutes. Anyways, it's the dopamine. And if you expect things to be hard, if you think things are going to be hard, they will be hard. And this is manifestation too. This is what I'm finding in manifestation. People like it's an idea. If you have the idea and then you act, in favor of a certain idea, that changes all your physiology and your mental thoughts can become your reality, and they will, positive and negative. But if you think it's hard, you're going to get the idea that, go home, stay home, don't do this. And you're like, yeah, you're right. I'm just a lazy slob. Haha, eat more chips and stuff like that. You're going to feed that dopamine system with things that are distractive, whether it's alcohol, sex, drugs, rock and roll. Who cares why we get distracted from major politics or your problems or my problems? Who cares what we get distracted by? This is the devolution. I think that's where the real devil is. And all this kind of stuff. But if you can be positive and you can say, okay, this suffering is part of the growth process. And I know when I start a race, so like when I was doing downhill ski racing, and they're like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm like, in the next 2 minutes, I could be a quadriplegic. Very different than when I was racing for cross country ski Canada on the 3rd level developmental scene. Maybe that was my avenue to Paralympian. 3, 2, 1 there, I'm like, in the next 20 to 30 minutes in this 10-kilometer race where I'm putting everything on the line, I'm going to be throwing up. I'm going to be sick. And if you think that that's part of the process and you get some kind of benefit out of that, if you get the dopamine release from that, you're going to enjoy it. And you don't mind going through that process.
It's interesting that you say that.
It's not necessarily what you do, it's how you feel about what you do.
Right.
So that's why you can't force this on anybody.
Right, 100%. So my experiences in the military, what it really fostered in me was the realization that you could push past any physical limit.
You told me about a day that you decided that your body would do what you told it to do, or you would die trying because you've seen somebody else being humiliated in front of people.
Yeah,
I remember these conversations, Bob, because they mattered.
Yeah, it was during basic. That was during basic training. Actually, it was
commando training.
It was during trades training. So I was learning to be an infantryman. I'm not going to get into the details, but
I remember these conversations.
They
matter. It influenced me, right? Like, things you say influence people, and I've influenced people with that thought as well.
Well, they humiliated a guy to the point where he completely folded as an individual, and I was like, I'm never going to be that guy. Like seeing it. And
they did it not for that guy. They detrimented him for your benefit, for the people going forward. They did it for that purpose. And I still see that. My son was in the military 10, 15 years ago. I think now they use actors. They do it differently, but the similar kind of thing is they want to get the masses. And I don't know how you're going to get all the negativity out of the military because it's the military. How are you going to teach people you have to kill that person? Why do I kill that person? Is it because they look different? Sure. Or they sound different? Sure. Or they believe something different? Sure. Or it's me. But how are you going to get, sexism and machism out of the military?
Look, I liked it the way it was presented to us. It's a function of the job.
Yeah.
That's why you're here. And if you don't want to, and if that disturbs you, leave.
So my son.
Right. So for me, it was. The entire view of it was very simple. Either you're going to do it or you're not. And
if you're not, lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Right. So, and I was like, I resolved myself to be okay.
A very simple symbol of that is when my son was in basic training, going up and down the flights of stairs, you have to get into different garb, and some of it doesn't make sense. It's like, I want you to come down with rubber boots on your hands. So my son is the person who's going to disseminate the information to the group. I'm not even going to have the right terminology. And so his commanding officers, sergeant, whatever's in front of him, he says, okay, I want you to go upstairs. You're going to get on your gym shorts. I want you to put on your dress shirt, have your fire blankets. When I walk into the room, everybody's going to go down into a basic stance, throw your fire blankets over your head, hands out, and go, ooh. My son smirked with rubber boots on. He goes, you think that's funny, soldier? There's nothing funny here. There's nothing hard here, nothing gross here. It's part of the job. 20 push-ups with rubber boots on your hands. It's a job. You got to learn to take it in balance and just keep on going. Pretend you're not a person. Just do a robotic type
Well,
job.
I mean, you know, after finishing basic training and the NCO that who I worked with in the last year and a half, I was in the military, put me through the battle school. So because I got to get very familiar with him, I asked, I go, why do we do the things in the way that we do? Although I've never experienced anything that your son went through, but everything that I experienced was harsh, and it was always they were always trying to separate the wheat from the shaft and find the guys who were weak. So it was always about answering a physical challenge that would push you to your limits. And remember, that's the thing I got hooked on. And he said, he goes, we trained you in the way that we did, and that it was thought out in the way that it was, so that when we were confronted with a situation where you had to do your job, that we knew that
you could depend on it.
Yeah, that you wouldn't fall.
Depend people's lives on it.
Right, that you would actually do your job, because that's what we need.
And see, what I find is, and I think it might have an influence on somewhat the success of the Allied Forces, is because it's voluntary. And because people choose this, and they weed out the people who can't and the people who will, excuse me, based on voluntary, and then that has to do with the dopamine, the enjoyment, or at least the understanding that it's part of the process to push yourself forward. You can't force people where you subscribe people into the military to defend your country and such like that. It's like, if you don't do this job, we'll shoot you. That'll take you a certain, but I hope that people that believe in the cause, and hopefully our leaders put people in places and positions for the right reasons to benefit the group. I certainly hope so.
Well, I was an adventurer. I was never.
Right? Yeah.
I was never.
So you did it for yourself as well.
Yeah, I
never for himself too.
I was never a patriot.
I wanted to know myself, like when he was 18, like when he goes in, like how do you feel about coming home under the Canadian flag? I want to know, are you doing this for the right reasons? And he said, it's not going to happen to me. I'm like, you're so 18, right? And I told him, I said, talk to your brothers. At the time, they were like 6 and 3 or something. He goes, what's it matter what they say? I said, it's nothing to do with what they say. It's how you feel about what they say. Are you joining? Because if you don't go in with the right attitude, if you don't go in with the right idea, you're going to find yourself in positions where you'd rather not be. But if you take it with the right, and again, it comes with the dopamine, the understanding or the acceptance or even the appreciation for the feelings that other people hate. And if they don't like it, they get a different response, and they might get their dopamine, or because this is real. It's electrical, then it's chemical, and you can get your chemical kicks, whether it's from drugs, sex, robbing a bank, or embezzling money from your company,
or a combination of all the above.
Yeah. Or maybe even serving the country and then try to rise up through the political and the battles that must engage. See, I don't know how you're going to get the partisanship out of it too, because by the time somebody joins a group and then gets leveraged up and then supported up and then becomes the leader of an agenda, how are you going to not be encouraged to support those who supported you? How do you get that out of there?
I don't know that you can. I think it might be an inherent kind of like
and this
to
is a flaw.
The nature of it. So it's you're right. It is a flaw.
This is one of the flaws in our modern day democracy, where I vote for my way and you vote for your way, and we vote red, we vote blue, we vote PC, we vote liberal. We don't like what's going on now, so we're going to go the opposite. And it's
I'm a political atheist, right? I don't have anything.
I like to vote for the person.
No.
Do you vote? Have you voted?
I don't want to answer.
Okay, fair enough.
But,
you have the right to remain silent.
Yeah,
but I think it's important.
But my view of voting might give you an indication. So my view of voting is that we're all being beguiled, and then whomever you're supporting, no matter what they say,
right,
they have an agenda.
They do.
Yeah, that's right. That has nothing to do with what's being said. What they're
saying, they're talking to a segment of population that's going to get them where they got to go.
Right.
But here's the thing.
So then again, it speaks immensely to just all sorts of dishonesty.
But okay, we were talking earlier about how are we going to change the system? Can the bottom overthrow the top?
It doesn't.
Beitula, have I learned? Have I been educated?
You said it wrong. It's Beitula.
Beidula.
No, Beitula.
Sorry. Beidula.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Anyways, if everybody who had an opinion decided we're not voting in Canada, PC, Liberal, or NDP, we don't like the way these three go, vote for the Green Party, vote for the Communist Party, and that's not a vote for the Communist Party, by the way. Vote for somebody that's on the card that's going to throw the system upside down and backwards.
I don't think you can have a meaningful change that's from top down. I think it has to go. It has to go from bottom up.
But our
it
system
has
is
to be grasped.
Okay,
It
but
doesn't
how
matter.
you can't overthrow the government.
It's
I mean,
not
the freedom
about-
fighters tried to do that.
No, you can't. Here's another thing. You can't use violence to produce
But we could vote.
revolution. I don't think voting produces a revolution.
But it would if the grassroots.
No.
If 20 million people, and I'll tell you, this is why I think Canada needs to be careful who they immigrate in here. And I don't mean from one culture or another culture, from all cultures. We need to blend here. I love what Canada's doing because we have an expression. Other people say, hey, if you don't like what happened, go home. People didn't want to come here. And our history has come here and established our own culture within this culture. The French did it, the English did it, the Indigenous have survived everything so far, and good on them. But the Chinese come here and they maintain their culture. The Serbians come here and maintain their culture. The Turkish come here, and the South American, they come here. We need them all. But if everybody would, because if we open our doors up, we're 40 million people. If we open our doors up to any one large culture, and I'm not even going to mention anyone, because typically I do one or the other or three, because it's easy. There's cultures out there of 1 billion people, 1.3 billion, 1.5 billion, and there's the city of Mexico. If we open the doors up to the city of Mexico, 25, 30 million people landed in Canada, and then we had a vote.
Wait a minute, isn't Mexico City only 20 million people?
I heard it was 20, 25 years ago. I'm assuming their entropy, just like everybody else, getting bigger all the time. I don't know. So maybe 20 million. But if they came here, and whoever they are, I mean, any culture, if anybody came here in mass and then they voted, and other people say it doesn't matter, we would have a very different country in 1, 2, or 3 votes.
I think that's kind of erroneous. I think that regardless of how many vote any particular way, it's still ultimately whoever the political class is, they're going to be exercising judgments in their own self-interest. So they don't. So the decisions that they make, regardless of what their political platform is, that they're going to act in a way that best serves them.
Okay, but
one and two, that if you want a meaningful revolution, it can't be violent anymore.
I
would say that there's an even better way you have to change the nature of your relationship with yourself.
Okay, fine.
But then
my actions, I have to change how I spend my money, where I spend my money.
Okay, very true. All of that would be super impactful, but I think what you need is you need a social movement within the general membership, where they start viewing each other and themselves in a way that's different than what we currently do.
Absolutely.
All right. So then, in doing that, then it's what would produce that change in leadership, because then you'd have different kinds of leaders entering the political class.
It would have to change. But the fastest way to do that is to get 20 million people to vote anyone which way.
I'll tell you the fastest way to do that.
All right.
You get everybody in the political class. For them now, the popular way of approaching their political platform is suddenly to come at everything transparently. Here, I'm going to be real honest and upfront.
They say that.
No. And this is how I mean. Everyone who's kicked back money to me, I'll tell you who they are, who the supporters, and what they want from me. And then now I'll express my struggle with trying to meet what the supporters want versus what's in the best interest of the general.
So Slim, go back through our editing here. 10 minutes ago, did he not just say that you could not change the system from the top down?
No, that's right.
But now you're saying people in the political system need to change, but how's it going to benefit them?
Well, because the social...
Slim's got an opinion.
I was going to say, it sounds like you're talking about these individual, Bob, you're saying these individuals have to find their own way of self-enlightenment, which personally I don't think they're interested in.
Well, okay, but it doesn't matter. All I'm illustrating is
Yeah.
that that's how difficult it is. So you're not going to get them to. That was the point I was trying to illustrate. They're not going to do it, right? Because the political class is inherently always interested in its own agenda.
Right, but you started that statement, they started that argument by saying the fastest way to change the system is something that's impossible. That's not the fastest way.
No, well, I mean,
It's not even
If they all took mushrooms, then it would be the fastest way.
That's interesting.
no,
that's illegal, by the way. I can't condone that.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't do that.
Although there's some good studies on PTSD and use of psychedelics in therapy.
I was gonna
tons
say,
of really good studies about that.
In proper doses and supervision.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about changes, so go ahead.
sorry, I was gonna say if it seemed like the position you're taking was we use the legal way that we've been told our government works in order for us to enforce it.
It's the only way.
Yeah.
You have to do it a legal way, otherwise it becomes a revolution, or it becomes like outside.
How about a social revolution?
Okay,
where
but you're talking
where people actively separate themselves from the leadership of their nation, and then what they start doing is they find workarounds among themselves. And the foundation is respect for each other.
Okay, are you talking about trading services outside of the taxing system, which is now illegal?
No.
Or are you talking about the freedom where they all collected, went to Parliament Hill, took over a city, and they tried to hostage?
Do is they start living their lives without
You're talking
acknowledging.
about putting your head in the sand and don't.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about you. That if they're going to do what they're going to do, there's very little you can do to prevent that. So then the question should be, you should focus on, well, what can you do?
Right.
Well, okay, here's
what is the very little that I can do?
Right.
And I'm not trying to change your opinion, but if you would vote, and if you would vote, and if I would vote, doesn't matter what we vote for, just vote. We should have 100% vote. 100%. If you didn't vote, it should be illegal. You should have to, and they should follow up, because your census is illegal. You have to provide a census. You have to pay your taxes. How come you don't have to vote? You've got the right to vote. You've got the right to remain silent.
I'll be real frank with you. I'm going to be 58 next month. In the entire time that I've been alive, I found very little to zero usage for the political class and the way they conduct themselves.
Right.
And for the global politics,
right.
and the fact that we live in a state where it's empire building. So if they're indifferent towards me,
right.
my view is that I'm completely indifferent towards them.
And that's cool, because now you have no impact on them, because you're outside of the law. You're not going to change the law. You have no threat to them. Their empire is safe as long as you don't care enough to do something within the system.
So you know what I do care about? I care about the evolution of the individual for the purposes of self-mastery, and that for everyone to change the nature of their relationship with their subjectivity so that they all become renegade, individualist, humanist, critical, objective thinkers.
Right, but you also now understand divided we're conquered, and you're supporting the individual, not the collective of individuals.
I told you, we are already the divided and the conquered.
Absolutely.
Okay,
so it's okay for them to be like, it's okay for...
No, it's not okay, but you're
There is a little thing that we could do.
No, I would respectfully disagree. I don't think voting carries any weight with it whatsoever.
It's the only way.
No, that in fact, the way is the evolution of the individual. And only when it's a revolutionary evolution of the individual members will it change. So that means that you, the individual, you stop going here. If I cast my ballot, that somehow it's going to have this positive effect on the institutions and leadership. And I'm like, it doesn't. It exists as it exists. So then the very best thing that you can do, and I hate to use this sales pitch and this meme from the fitness industry, really is to discover the highest expression of who you are. And that only can it come into being when your personal purpose to your existence is to push the limitations of whom you presume to be and who you think you are. But none of us ever got educated in that capacity. And then what we do is we argue passionately for our bias, our preference, our prejudice, our opinion, our expectation, and then the only thing it contributes to is our division.
Exactly. So now I'm going to go back to the fitness thing. Be the best you can be. When you're in I don't know
the best version of you.
Right. When you're in there exercising for your deltoid, if you don't elevate your shoulder blade, you're injuring supraspinatus impingement. So you're trying to be the best person you can be. If you run, you got bad mechanics of your knees, you got bad posture, you're deflated, you're not working on your cardiovascular. If you don't work on the whole, not just a piece of the whole. If your cardiovascular is the most important, your musculoskeletal system will suffer, and you will get better as you get worse. And this until you become irrelevant. And it's in everything. So that's why we have to work on the whole, not the individual, to become a better whole.
Right, but it's you indirectly change the whole, right? By directly changing yourself.
Absolutely.
So the focus has to be yourself, and that process is in a constant state of evolution, which means that, much to the example that you gave with regards to developing your deltoids, that it's not done in a vacuum or a bubble. You don't spend all your time in your confirmation bias. That you have to take a global look at you, not the institutions outside of you. You first. Right? And then you foster all the very best of what you're capable of, and then that translates eventually into it spills out into everything outside of you. So if everybody's focus was self-mastery, the evolution of self, and that's the permanent state of your existence. So you're in a constant state of learning and pushing yourself beyond whatever limitations that you perceive, then that's what would change everything.
And this is also, and challenge yourself with other thoughts, right? And this is what I think in a free society where we're going to hear things we don't like. You're going to see things you don't like.
Yeah.
But see, we're starting to say, well, that's hate, and let's eliminate that. And I'm not in favor of discriminatory or hateful, but I think we have to manage it because people are welcome to their free expression. We hope it doesn't catch on. We hope we're an evolved society where a bunch of individuals say, this is not where I don't want that in my society, and that's cool. But just to blanket things, say, I don't want to see hate, I don't want to read hate on graffiti, I don't want to see certain flags of...
That's childish.
Well, it goes all the ways, right?
It's
you can have a
childish.
positive flag and a negative flag. We're talking the LGBT flag or the Confederate flag. You're like, I don't want to see either of them.
Okay, right.
But I want to see all of it. I want to see all of it. I want to see on your face, how you feel about me. Or how I feel about you. And we were talking, and they're not far off. And actually, they have the ECGs, EEGs, and stuff that the bands will tell you exactly, because they can predict now simple words and letters and numbers that you're thinking. So if you had to wear these bands, in the future, whatever, human emotions.
Control.
No, you're right. But okay, in the American Constitution, you've got the freedom of expression, but you don't have the freedom of thought. Freedom of thought, and I watched an Iranian-born New York lawyer talk about this in TED Talks. You do not have the freedom of thought. In any constitution, the freedom of thought is not protected as of this moment. So if there is a way to figure out your thought, so if they're, and they do, and I'm like, someday in the future, and these games that can be controlled by your mind. And I've heard, I don't know for sure, but I've heard that in China, they've got these, the bands that read your mood, and it's going to be red, yellow, green, or blue. And if you're not in the right mood, you cannot drive that bullet train. They're using them in factories, as this is what I've heard. Again, here's what they say in the rumor. They're using
it's no surprise. China's, it's well understood they have a social credit system, right? And
I'm glad we're here because we talked about the faults of democracy, where we can choose this, or choose not to choose, which is still a choice.
But personally, it feels like it's moving towards a social credit system even here.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there in a second. Well, I don't know. Eventually, our conversation is gonna get there because we're like-minded. So, but in a monopoly or in a monogamy, I don't know. What am I thinking? Like in a dictatorship. You don't go this way and this way.
That's
you go
another way
straight.
of saying complete centralization.
Right. You go straight because the class and the elite go straight. And we say that that's not offering freedom, but they evolve quicker because they've made a choice, they stick to that choice, and they've got the support of the people, whether it's by leverage,
threat
or whatever.
What dictator never used the threat of violence to maintain that position? Come on.
It's a stronger leadership.
The very history of any kind of communist kind of ideology that ran any nation, what they do, they purged their entire membership first. I'm going, I go, come on, like, is that what you're prepared to do?
Well, it's
But
a
we
lot
do it
quicker. It's a lot quicker than democracy. You just burn everybody that doesn't agree with you.
But in democracy, we get people to choose to either give up your rights or not care about your rights, or it doesn't matter.
Or it's the illusion that you get to choose your rights. Right. So you could if I'm going to use the example of voting, then it could be deluded thinking then that the vote has anything meaningful to it, and then the argument in the use of voting is just another way to generate lively discussion and avoiding the real issue, which is that we're all
we're hearsay and rumors and
conquered. Sorry, go ahead.
Look this stuff up. Like Tula said, don't rely on anything we say. There was a girl in 2012, a grade 7 girl. She did genealogy in all presidents at that time. All but one came from the lineage of King John in the 1500s. How can a democratic society choose family members?
Oh, come on! World War I was essentially a family feud that all the.
I don't know this, but I don't.
All right, so World War I, all the nobility in Europe at that time, they were all related. Because remember,
absolutely
right, they were related because they'd intermarry within the different royal houses of the different countries in Europe, right? So by the time they got to World War I, when they actually laid siege against one another, it was relative versus pitting their nation against another relative. So
this does not surprise me. Before we go further, do we still have memory on this card?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure that this conversation is getting recorded because I like where we're going here.
You don't have to worry about that.
Okay, cool.
We're solid. Can I get a time check? And how much duration? How long have we been into the conversation?
4:48 right now.
What?
4 hours?
No. It's 4:48 p.m.
I asked duration.
Yeah.
How did you?
How long have we been in this?
What time?
Didn't you say time and then
time check?
Time check.
Duration.
2 out of 3. He's right.
2 hours, 15 minutes, 24 seconds, 25 seconds, 26 seconds.
If you were bored before, this is a good time to be joining this conversation now. Like, just scrap the first 2 hours and join us now.
No. I think it's all valid. Look. All we are is expressing ideas, and it really is meant for food for thought.
Are you familiar with? I'm gonna get it wrong. Orson Welles. I didn't know that. Hey, who wrote 1984?
Yeah,
Orson Welles.
No, George Orwell.
George Orwell. Thank you. That's okay. That's okay.
Orson.
I don't know.
Not you.
No, me.
No. Slam.
But that's how. Okay, so that was a Trumpism. I said that was agreed by somebody else, and it became true.
Yeah, it's safe.
You ruined our truth.
You mean you're fallacious?
Yes. But if enough of us wrote that down, we could change history. That's true. A majority can change history, and that's the problem with one of the types of democracy where if we had a vote, we could change the Constitution.
So it's interesting interesting that you pointed that out. So then what is reality? Is it a perception or interpretation of events?
Yes.
Or no. It's when you say
I said yes too soon.
when you say that reality is an interpretation.
But my reality could be this out there and you say no. Don't yuck my yum.
Wait. I'll quantify. Okay. So if reality's only an interpretation or a perception or interpretation, it's a partial reflection of what's actually occurring. All right, and it's usually reflective of subjectivity. But you can look at the events of reality objectively, and then you can determine what's actually occurring. So then the difference becomes the actual events that occurred or your perception and interpretation of the events. And that's what we always struggle with. And this is what, and again, it's not one or the other. And this is the argument that I'm forever making, that should your perception or interpretation is another form of subjectivity. It's another way of saying prejudice, bias, preference. Who gives a fuck do you like chocolate ice cream? Big fucking deal. The fact that's most relevant is the fact that you're having ice cream. But now you're confusing the issue because what you're focusing on is your preference instead of the objective truth, which is that you're having ice cream.
talking about interpretation. So Netflix CEO a couple years ago, maybe I don't know, same guy didn't. He said there's a difference between your actual preference and your perceived preference. You can look at a movie like a classic and you give it like a 5 stars because it's a great movie, but your actual preference is what you people watch. And that's the stuff that you're going to see on Red Tomatoes or whatever. It's going to be like 2s and 3s, 2s and 3s and stuff. It's all the shit movies that people watch that all the time. But you know, the things that are like perceived to be classics, nobody really watches. They watch it once or twice. It's like, so there's a difference between your perception. But my reality is based on my perception. But my perception is based on what I've learned, what I've read, and all of that stuff has been manipulated by whoever wins. Because you don't hear the stories of the people who lost. Maybe you do on occasion, and maybe we're starting to right some of those wrongs, and we're starting to go back. We need documentation to go back. And
okay, so all right, so then you're speaking to the argument that I'm making, because if you're actually objective in your observations of reality, then you see both sides of every issue. You're without favoring a particular angle, which is exactly what interpretation and perception is. That you have an angle, you have a dog in the fight, so the outcome's meaningful to you. You know what the outcome for me is? It's never meaningful. I don't give a shit where the actual chain of events leads. I'm only interested in seeing where it goes. And I don't ignore any side of any issue, because the first thing I realized that you could take any idea, any perception or interpretation, and you can weaponize it to divide people. And I'm like going, haven't we had enough of that?
Okay, so my concern about changing the history and eliminating some of the negative stuff about this person did some good, some bad, but we're going to get rid of completely what they did, statues and all kinds. We need to leave documentation why we made the decisions that we've made, so that future generations can choose to judge on a different level. Because if we eliminate everything, they say, like, if you get rid of all, it can happen, and history can repeat itself again and again. So we got to leave a trail. I think it should be mandatory that society, when you're
I think we should absolutely.
We have to leave documentation on the good side and on the bad side, so that future generations can judge it and understand why. Because all we've got is maybe some Sumerian tablets from 6,000 years ago, and we got to increase the amount of volume of information to the point now where it's just all
okay.
It doesn't matter.
So, and with regards to our history and the ancient past, it's full of holes. But in terms of the recent past,
and some of it's on purpose.
The recent past, say the last couple hundred years, we have really good detailed historical accounts of everything that's happened. And I'm an advocate for the
written by somebody
who was there, who experienced it.
But written towards one bias or another based on who
but
won
here's
the conflict.
Here's the beauty. In the last couple hundred years, you have experts who will express a difference of opinion about the same subject, coming at it from 2 different positions. And so then you have the benefit of seeing not one interpretation, but multiple interpretations. And then you can find the mean, maybe the middle road, right? The middle way. Go ahead, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to throw in there, it definitely changes objectivity depending on how much transparency you have. I don't believe there's true objectivity without absolute knowledge, which is impossible.
No. All you have to do is see the actual events,
yeah,
and then not color them with any kind of. You don't need absolute knowledge to hey, it's a car crash. You see the car crash. You're able to detail the events of the car crash. That's an objective truth, but. You going, well, that motherfucker, he was just driving all over the goddamn place. That's an interpretation of it.
But why was he driving all over the place?
Well, you don't know.
Exactly, but absolute knowledge would provide that, and historic context and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And AI will have that more than we will, because I might have an opinion, you're saying, but there's a fact that came before all that, or in the midst of that, or on the side of that you didn't know, and I'm like, oh, that changes everything.
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to tie this into, like, we do have a certain degree of fallibility where we just don't know. We could be living in an AI simulated
absolutely
cyborg brain, whatever. Like, there's certain lengths of you just can't figure it out. AI, supposedly, if we create this, is going to have any of that.
If we're not living in it right now.
Yeah, is it going to think that it's fallible, or is it going to have the same sort of like faith in itself?
Well, I don't know. Can you create algorithms to mimic faith?
Yeah, I would think so.
I don't know. Like, I'm not an expert. I find it kind of hard to believe.
I think any algorithm.
So you can create an algorithm now that'll accurately provide emotional content for an intellectual,
well, hang on.
an artificial intellectual capacity?
There were emotional dolls or robots being sold in Japan for $10,000. So, and I believe Japan's been working on robotic rights. Anyways, talking about transparency,
Well,
we've talked about
actually,
your age, my age.
actually-
How old are you, Slim?
Oh, 24.
Okay,
Yeah.
you got a different perspective. Okay.
Actually, the transhumanists have identified. You can mock it all you want.
No, it's a word. I gotta get my head around it.
But they've made a declaration of sentient rights.
Okay, well, hang on. What are we talking about? Transhumanists.
Well, because we
Like
actually
gene editing. It's not like
okay, transhumanists. Have you ever heard of somebody by the name of Ray Kurzweil? He's
No.
one of. It's highly intellectual. People are driving this, and depending on who you ask, there could be as many as 2 million, and I think maybe as little as like 50 or 60,000, or might even be 30,000 supporters of this globally. And their view is the integration of synthetic, artificial intelligence, and organic intelligence.
Okay, so
And
Elon Musk is doing something with the.
well, their view is it represents the next evolutionary step. So it would be self-directed evolution.
Okay.
So instead of
What's
natural
the company that's
selection,
doing that?
what's that?
Elon Musk is doing that with the.
The Neuralink.
Neuralink, yeah. And they got approval to do human testing and stuff like that. I've also seen through TED Talks, like everything organic on this planet is made out of the broken down parts of DNA into, I can't think of the words right now, but ACTG. Those four things in different combinations makes up every biological system on the planet. And they've come up with XY. Now it's not XY like boy, girl. But now you can do ACXY to have a whole new subset of life, or XYTG, or ACTGXY to have 3 plus what we already have, like 4 different subsets. Like everything is on the planet now. What's the word for that? The little broken down pieces of.
You're talking about RNA?
No, inside RNA, all those little codons and stuff like that. But
the genome.
Yeah, the genome, but everything's like ACT.
Yeah, I know.
There's a word for those.
It's the smallest scale where they create.
Yeah, I'm just not that
Right.
But everything, but they said it. Not only is it possible, but it might even be necessary to change humanity so that we can do interstellar travel. You know, we can go through higher levels of radiation. If to save ourselves, I've heard of these ideas.
Look, the only argument I would make with regards to those kind of advancements in technology, where now you could essentially create a form of immortality or more robust humans.
They won't be humans.
But even if they're just an iteration of humanity, right? Like it's still humans. They're just not exactly Homo sapiens. So the argument I would make is that in the capacity to do that's when you would need to demonstrate the highest degree of wisdom, which I'm not entirely convinced that those people are in the pursuit of it.
Right.
Demonstrate.
So there was a controversy, I guess, a couple years ago. Some Chinese scientists that didn't have approval by anybody put an intelligent gene into monkeys or apes. And we've seen through Planet of the Apes how that could play out. But
with the transhumanism, you can make you could tailor-make perfect genetic babies. So you could make humans.
Define perfect.
Okay. Here's the definition of perfect.
Wait. What color would their eyes be?
No. That they're physically, they would be the highest, and it would be genetically imprinted on them. So instead of you having to spend a lifetime developing it, they come out of the womb with now the genetic potential to be the physical peak of what they could be. So
we have to decide if we want to aspire to not have any deviations, or do we celebrate our individuality by what makes us different? I wouldn't be here.
Okay, so
my type would be gone. Blind people go away.
You wouldn't go away. What they would do is then they'd correct for that. So
correct for that. But I had a Chinese guy and I said, "Are you left-handed?" Because his spine went this way. And he goes, "I was left-handed," and then I was corrected. What's wrong with being left-handed? I'm left-handed.
There's nothing wrong.
There's a culture back in the day that would have got rid of me too because I was left-handed before I became blind.
They thought left-handedness was equated to being evil.
Because I use the right side of my brain. I'm doing different.
Look, all I would say to you is that from what I've heard with regards to what they can do with the human genome, that they could not only change the color of the eyes, change the shape of the eyes and the function of the eye, that they
can read cerebral palsy, epilepsy, Down syndrome.
I'm talking about more cosmetic changes that you could have. Instead of hair, you could have feathers. They could strike. You could become, your pigmentation could become as such that you'd be spotted or striped.
Now there has to be some sort of function to that. I mean, scaly or whatever.
Well, whatever. But it might not
benefit.
It might not be.
Have to, but
it could be, because depending on the level of sophistication, it become entirely cosmetic.
Oh my God!
So they do it for just appearance's sake.
Okay, so now we're talking about like people. You're choosing for somebody else. We're struggling with identity and gender, which is chosen by natural selection, because the pH balance in the vagina selects certain, or is favorable certain sperms, X or Y, and now when they come out, it's like when the baby comes out, them come out, and we're struggling with gender identification as we get older. And now people are doing things like, tattooing, and they're doing piercings. Now you're talking about two parents that said, I want my child to have feathers.
Or they want,
wow,
they want to plan exactly. They want the highest expression of intelligence. They want the highest.
And they do that.
Well, this is what I'm saying.
I have same-sex clients that have selected their donor for their
No. Instead of selective breeding, which is what we've always done with animal husbandry, I'm talking about now with them mapping the human genome, that it opens up the door for them to make tailor-made humans. So humans who like basically defy the traditional view of the way humans
I like to be very careful with that, and same with the IL. We got to be careful with
again,
you can't put it back in the case.
Right, and I initially opened with, I don't think that maybe we have enough wisdom and we're not discerning enough to be able to be tinkering with that stuff. But here's the rub. The rub is we always do shit we're not supposed to be doing.
And because of that curiosity, that's what pushed humanity into the moon. So that's why people say, I don't believe in extraterrestrial. Like, we are extraterrestrial. We've been to the moon. We're out there. We're going to find out if the planet is round or if it's flat. Because there's businesses that are out there doing it now. Like, eventually we're going to find out more of the truth. They can't have a flat Earth, and we're not going to find out about that.
Well, there's a lot of, there's a lot of fostering of, because there's so much information, and it's information overload, that then you mix in inaccurate information, so disinformation, and then what does it produce as an outcome?
No, this is one of the issues I've got.
Overstimulation, confusion.
This is one of the issues I've got with science fiction. Now, we need science fiction, and you look around at some of the devices we got now, and you look at Star Trek from way back when, and it's like, that science fiction has, in argument, because I had a client that was doing astrophysicist, and he was working on warp drive. I get what he's doing and why he's doing it, but why did he call it warp drive? But no, I just want you to notice something. I got my guide dog down here. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah. He's been sitting here for 2.5 hours.
He's a good boy.
Yeah, it's dinner time. What's the actual time there, Slim?
He said just after 4?
Yeah, it's 5:04.
Oh, 5:04?
His dinner time, his union dinner time is 4:30. He's been very patient now. He's like, this is really affecting my dinner time.
Okay, then let's.
I want to talk more about this stuff.
Okay, let's just spend another half hour on this, and we'll call it a day.
Just give me a second. Shanann! Oh, yeah, here. I'll give you the kibble in my pocket.
Oh yeah,
that's right.
Because that's why I was hanging out there. But all I'm saying is that we'll put a cap on this. Just
I want to go.
No, because we can revisit the conversation.
We were talking about transparency. This one I want to get back to. Talking about transparency, and it would be lovely if it was transparent. But they put stuff into contracts. I had a client that did like large-scale concrete hospitals, infrastructure, bridges, and stuff like that. And he told me that his company wouldn't submit a tender or submit a proposal for a job in Brampton, because part of that proposal signs off your right to complain if you didn't like the decision. So he says, if we put in a proposal and we know that we can do that better job cheaper, faster, and a better quality, we can't tell anybody. We put in a bid that was half the price, half the time. We can't tell anybody. But the company who's, the governance that does the transparency, they're like, okay, well, we're just going to write on all of these safe fails so you can't complain about and we can still be transparent. Talking about transparency, the Freedom of Information Act, that's great if you go through the government. And there's people that have been trying to get freedom of information from the royal family, and there will be a fire long before you get any of those notes going back thousands of years from the royal family. But in the United States, maybe in Canada too, instead of like doing things under the government umbrella where you can get freedom of information, they subsource all of that information, all that job out to a third party that's not part of freedom of information.
Well, again, it's another.
And you can still be as transparent as you want and not tell anybody what you're doing.
Okay, well, but that's not them taking on transparency in a personal way.
In a functional way.
Right, and it's them being upfront about everything that they're doing. They're not. Again, the control of information allows for greater control.
Absolutely.
Right, so no one should be surprised by the fact that the institutions that have authority and are authoritarian are exercising that kind of influence on information, because it serves, again, ultimately serves their
So
private
I brought
agenda.
up George Orwell, and I wanted to talk about that because I read only one of the books. The one book's called Animal Farm. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah.
I still want to read 1984, and shamefully I haven't written. It was written in 1948. It was very predictive. But Animal Farm, the premise is that a group of animals kick a human out, and maybe somewhere in the United Kingdom somewhere, and they kick the humans out, and they run the
pigs
farm
run the
themselves.
show.
Well, the pigs are the most intelligent, so therefore they take over it. The
And
horses
they use the Dobermans for their
Right.
watchdogs.
Well,
right?
there was two pigs. They all collectively said we're all going to be the same, right? So they all helped each other. They put in the same amount of work, different abilities, and then they take out the same rewards. They all take out for each other. They support each other. Then there was two pigs that had ideas. One pig decided he was going to take over a couple of Dobermans, raise them separately. Nobody's seen them for a year and a half, 2 years. The other pig had lots of ideas on how to get to electrify some of their processes and make it easier on the horses and the other animals that are doing the labor. And then that other pig came back with the Dobermans, ran that guy out, told everybody that, and they wrote down the rules on the wall in whitewash. They wrote down the rules like no animal should ever drink. And then after the pigs decided they found alcohol, it's like no animal should drink to excess. They just changed the rule just a little bit. And because the animals were learning how to read, but not that much. And they're like, didn't the rules say, animals shouldn't live in the house? It's like, well, animals that are doing administration can only live in the house. Like they changed. And
Convenient.
One of the big things about that is the sheep that were just like sheep, and they follow along. They would always say like 2 legs bad, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. So every time then there was a guy that was squealer, he would always come and disseminate the information from the one pig down to the group, and they no longer had a vote. They didn't need a vote because this guy took over control and thought, and you don't understand all the documentation, all the processing we have to do that pigs do inside the house, and they wouldn't wear clothes and da. So then they would disseminate all this information, and anytime there was an argument, but wasn't the rule this, and shouldn't we be doing this? The sheep would always stand up and say, they would say, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. So then they took the sheep away. And the pigs come out of the house, and they got the Dobermans coming first, and you got the other sheep, the other pigs that are standing up now on 2 legs, and they're wearing clothing. And then they're like, well, isn't this against the rules? Now the sheep have been reprogrammed to say 4 legs good, 2 legs better. Just change it a little bit. Just change the narrative just a little bit. Then the animal and the humans, which had some conflicts over the time, they had a party, and it really broke my heart to see the horse who thought, I'll just do more. I'll wake up earlier. I'll do more. I'm reaching retirement age. I'm going to do more, and I can retire, and I'm reaching retirement age in 2 months. He fell over. The pig sent him off to the slaughterhouse, to the glue house. There's nothing the animals. They finally came and realized, but it was too late to save their friend. Broke my heart that somebody would, and it's the way it is. But then they had a party with the humans and the pigs, and the mare, the horse, looked in through the window, and they were having a toast. It's like the pig said, well, it's actually the human said, at first there was a lot of mistrust between our 2 cultures, and but we see that you're doing things with much more efficiency than we are, so we're going to take all of your practices and we're going to bring them back to our farms. And the pig says, you know what, we're going to soften our line a little bit. We're not going to be so extreme. We're going to take the hoof print off of our flag. We're not going to march around our thing. We're not going to call each other, and the word is comrades that they use on there. We're not going to, we're going to soften it, so we're becoming more alike. And they had a toast to success, and they were playing cards. They had an interruption of them to do this toast. And then when they stopped the toast, the mayor walked away, and they heard an argument. So then the mayor goes back and looks in the window, and now there's the cards are on the table. They're fighting about who's got the better hand. And there's two ace of spades. They both have the ace of spades. So you realize one person's cheating. And she's looking around the table, pig, human, pig, human, pig, human. And she goes, it's already blending and too hard to tell who is who. And it's the integration of democracy and communism that we're starting to see. And I can't believe this stuff was written in 1945, 1950.
Well, and it speaks to like, if you
read the book,
if you do small incremental changes,
yeah,
over a long period of time, you can produce a significantly large change.
But this is going back to the small changes. If you have an opinion, the only way to change it is make a vote. Because if it changes, nobody cares, nobody votes, it doesn't get documented, it's not going to be corrected. If you don't, you got to stand up for yourself, and the only way to legally do that is have a vote. We need 40 million people voting for 40 million people. We can't have 5 million people voting.
I'm complete agreement. If it was,
it will make a difference.
1 for 1 vote. No. We could. The way the voting works in this country is groups of us vote, and it allows for a riding to take dominance, or a particular group to take dominance.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar, but it has to do with population representation, doesn't it?
All right. Well, then I would absolutely vote if it was direct democracy. Citizen lawmakers, people directly voting on the issues on hand and how it affects them, and then you live and die by the sword. But there's too much tomfoolery with it.
Live and die by the sword too. That brings up another thought too. So we talked about all kinds of different leadership and ruleship. We can't live in a free world because while you're here, somebody can steal your house, and without the rule of law, you can't defend yourself unless you go back and physically take it. So that advantage is the physical. Everybody's got some kind of an advantage, whether it used to be physical ability, whether it was men or whatever. But now there's all kinds of survival of the fittest. Now it's computer fittest, financial fittest, legal fittest. There's all kinds of things, and it's no longer muscle. And that serves a great purpose, but it changed things. Right? A lot of weak people, and it allows people to become weaker and still be stronger financially or legally or whatever. I also wanted to talk, we talked about some of these other conflicts, but what's your cultural background?
I'm 100% Albanian. Eastern European.
Where's Albania?
Nestled in between Greece and Northern Macedonia.
Okay. Because the conflicts that we're seeing now, like Russia and Ukraine, that goes back a long ways. The First World War, you mentioned that as a family rivalry. It always surprised me.
Family feud.
Yeah, it always surprised me that the royalty of England that is so beloved, especially with her Royal Highness Queen Elizabeth, and my mom lived for Queen and Country. Her heritage is not even English; it's German.
Yeah, but the Windsors were
not their name, by the way.
Right, and they were German.
Yeah. But they're beloved by the English, like this is their culture, and like it's not really you're led by it.
But again, it's because all the royalty within Europe were interbreeding, and that was to consolidate power.
But that's not a secret society, and the Masons have been doing it, and the Skull and Bones have been doing it, and all kinds of and the money, the elite, they do it because they don't live in my neighborhood, they live in another neighborhood. They go to schools where their kids meet other kids. They're on the tennis, or they're on the golf or the chess. Or they get into certain universities, and then when they get there, they get into certain groups, and then those groups, whether it was the Freemasons that were all throughout Scotland Yard or any other organization too, lots of people join an organization to put your people in this position for success. And if you don't have that,
so then you have large. They're small in terms of like their group size, but they're large numbers of them who are moving agendas that they share.
That's right.
I'm going, well, guess what? It's been going on since we've been recording history, right? So I would argue that like here, maybe the idea is to be free of these agendas, and it's not that you shouldn't have them, but that you treat them like. And again, I would all these agendas. I would under a much larger heading. I would say subjectivity is that it's not. The failure is not being subjective. The failure is in treating your subjectivity as somehow it's paramount. That's where the failure is, and it allows for people then to foster greater division among all of us. I go, and isn't that the problem we've been suffering with for 5,000 years? And now you have all these institutions and all these countries and nations who've been vying for empire to bring humanity under a single flag, right? And I'm going, when you could easily have that kind of unity if every time you looked at somebody, all you saw was yourself.
That would be nice, but it's a different aspect of myself too.
Well, but it doesn't matter.
It's getting harder and harder to get this competition at the top level, because like farmlands, instead of having 100 acres, now they're 10,000 acres. So certain
because they're factories instead of being.
But one company's getting bought up by another bigger company, so you're getting less competition. It's going from 5 to 1.
Right.
But they have to
centralization.
But governance is saying, well, we can't have centralization, so you have to have centralization with 2 or 3 companies. You know,
still
centralization. And they need each other, because it's like, well, I can't buy you because I need you, so I have to make sure you're surviving. So we have 3 of us, so we can all do the same thing. And that's all. Anyways, the disappointing stuff that's happening in the world right now, and you know, like Israel and Palestine, this goes back to 2,000 years, and I think this is the center of everything. I don't know what it means. But
to me, it's just another. It's become just another.
But this is not just another one, because
another example of how we've allowed for our ideologies to divide us so much so that now you're willing to kill somebody who has a different ideology. And I'm like, come on, 5,000 years of it, and still it's still an issue. It speaks to. I'll be real frank. It speaks to the stupidity
ignorance.
It's downright stupid behavior.
It is.
Okay.
So Romanian soldiers were told to turn on their own people, and they refused to. I don't know, whenever. I don't know when, but I have a lot of admiration for people that do that and say, no, I'm not going to do that for this reason or whatever. They took a lot of risk. But this is not another incident, because I'll say why, because they're equating this is like that area is 9/11, and the reason that it's that area is 9/11 is because when 9/11 happened, you brought this up, Slim, but when that happened, it galvanized a nation against an enemy, and this incident has brought United Nations condemnation to Palestine terrorists that don't recognize their right to exist. Israel has now got some freedom within some tolerances. The United States is saying, hey, you can do some things, but we don't want this indefinite. You've got to be a little bit more selective, because again, there's atrocities on both sides. I don't care I do care if Palestinians came in or Hezbollah came in and killed babies. Of course I care. But that narrative was used to get the United States into Second World War. It's been used in Iraq. Babies in incubators getting stabbed. But I don't pretend for a second.
Fucking fallacy. It was a lie.
Even if it's true. Well, I don't pretend for a second that right now all of these bombings that's going on in Palestine isn't killing babies too.
Of course.
So it's unfortunate.
The collateral damage and any kind of look. This is what I'm saying. This is the point I was illustrating much earlier in the conversation. That here, look, the moment that you decide that violence is a way to manage the problem, it's a complete failure. It's not managing the problem. Now you're trying to dominate whoever the opposition is, to the point where now you can secure physical control over them.
The reason I think this is a pinnacle moment in society, and again, I don't understand all of it, but Israel is where Israel is because Israel was put there after the Second World War. The Rothschilds, a very influential family that lent countries money, decided they own that land. They put them there in 1947, 1950, whatever. This goes back thousands of years, where the division between the Christianity started in Jerusalem with Jesus. The Jewish says, I don't believe in Jesus and Christian and stuff like that. So Judaism has been there, Muslim has been there, the father of Abraham, and this is like the cross section of everything, and the political will and gain that's put them there to allow them to stay there, and now they're deciding to have a conflict that could easily spill. I don't want to see this be Christian, Muslim. I like what Canada's doing.
Okay, the argument. Okay, so then the argument could be that what it represents is the potentially the destabilization of whatever kind of global society that we have.
That's a good point, because now Hezbollah is said to be supported by Iran, but I even looking into like modern politics, and even back to like Bill Cosby, he was of a level, he was kind of like outside of the law. He's like, he told people, you don't know who I am. But then it's crumbled. And the people in, I'm not going to get Epstein maybe, I don't know, the guy in Hollywood that used to control that, like Jewish people there. And you're like,
I don't.
but like, that's one organization that had tight control on a lot of influence on a lot of things, culture. And it's slowly being eroded.
Well,
by another culture.
but,
by who? That's what I worry about. By who?
Okay, so then it speaks to the universal constant. There is only one absolute in all the universe, and that's change. And whatever change occurs, that change is also subject to further changes.
Yeah.
Right. So
the more you change the more, you can't get back to the original.
Right. So it can only continue to change into something else. So it would be fair then to say that everything that we've been talking about today ultimately represents change. And where we are currently in terms of the struggle of humanity to come to terms with itself, regardless of its differences, again, change is what's driving it. And what is it changing into? I'm not sure that I'm prescient enough to be able to say, and I don't think anybody can accurately know, because there's the presumption is that somehow this is all going to continue to change in a way that you can kind of see the moves out, maybe out in front, not too far out in front of the changes that are occurring. But what about things that we can't account for, and there'll be random radical game changers, discovering free energy, for example. I'm not saying that there is, but
it might be suppressed and buried under, like Tesla tried to do this.
Okay, instead of suppressed, what if it becomes now actively, like it's free source, and they make it actively available to everybody on the planet? How much would that radically influence then the politics of the time? Or guess what? We finally get absolute confirmation of non-human intelligence. That's not artificial intelligence, but another organic intelligence from somewhere else finally makes their presence known. Isn't that suddenly that dramatically changes the direction of the change? Yeah. All we know is that it's changing, and it's going to continue to change. The question becomes how, right? Yeah. So, okay.
Part of change or not part of change. Anyways, we were talking about change. I want to talk about this. Like, are you familiar with the term entropy?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so entropy is like the universe is expanding, right? Everything. It's more likely that an egg is going to break than it is to fall together, or your room is going to become a disarray rather than become clean. It's just more like the universe is falling apart.
It's the movement from order to chaos.
Right. So we don't have, the word we have in physics for things that come together, because lots of things come together. They know that there was the Big Bang that started the entropy, the expansion of the universe, which is getting faster and faster. We have a word for that. But things come together. Planets have come together. Solar systems have come together. The androgynous systems coming to, we will have a different, whether one goes through the other, takes absorb. We are having things to come together. The egg did come together. The word we use for things that coming together is called negative entropy. Like, do we not even have a better word?
Even Wilhelm Reich talked about an anti-entropy principle, and so for him it was his view it was orgone energy, right?
So in the human body, we talk about efferent, which is going away from the brain spine. It's an efferent electrical current. We have an afferent, right? Where the information is coming back. And that's why I like, entropy and entropy. But we don't have a word for things coming together, though we know things come together. We came together. It was unlikely. Unlikely that you would, meet me, that we'd stay together. Very unlikely we'd both live this long. Very unlikely we'd have this conversation. And yet, unlikely I'd meet this gentleman, Slim.
And yet, here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
Slim,
hey.
Are you wanted by international police?
Not yet, sir.
Why are you not on camera?
Oh, no, I just never thought it was...
Did you feel you're particularly ugly? I don't know. I'm not judging.
You tell me. It was always an option, and he just.
I know another gentleman. I was doing a martial arts thing. It was supposed to be like the 12-week introduction to karate mastery, and he wanted to go through this phase. We only got 6 weeks in, and now we're like at 6 months. 6 weeks in, I kind of lost, and he wasn't here much. But he didn't want to be seen on camera either, and he wanted to have this big transformation, so he wanted to hide himself. I respect your right to stay on camera or off camera.
I figure that there's no point to anonymity, that there is no anonymity now now we know because of Edward Snowden, that all the data collection, that the likelihood is not only is all that information like now accessible,
Right.
now with the introduction of like synthetic or artificial intelligence, they'll have the capacity to compile that information. So the point I'm trying to make is there's no hiding, and I'm not hiding.
There's
so
no hiding, but yeah, exactly. I agree with you too. I heard, I don't know, the Information for Life or whatever. There's a radio station that talks about these Kayla dolls a motel put out there years ago, and they had 3 feeds. One for the parents. Like it was like you could talk to the baby. It's just okay. Talk to me. It's okay. We're just best friends. Call the Kayla doll. And there was 3 internet feeds that came off of that, and one went to the parents, so they could talk to the kid and integrate whatever. One went to the motel, how is it going to use, and one went to the NSA. Why do they want to know what 5-year-old kids are talking to their doll? Anyways, I don't know.
Well, it's because data is power. Information
absolutely
is power.
So
right?
now, and even I watch a TED talk talking about the of everything, the internet of everything, right? And all your devices talk amongst themselves, but also go back to the manufacturer, including female vibrators. And she had a hub where all transmissions in and out of her house went through this hub. And they monitored her vibrators, and she called up the manager or manufacturer. Why do you need to know? They want to know duration, heat, like how you're using it, the aggressiveness of it. They want to know
because it's all of that's data. So then
your
if you
toothbrush is going to send information.
Listen, so then if you can ultimately compile all that information, it'll actually tell you something. Right?
It'll tell you something.
But to be able to compile it, that requires like a significant intelligence that I don't think organically we have. So then
the 5G network is going to allow everything to talk to everything. And we're talking about the actual preferences versus your perceived preference. They will know you. I mean, manufacturers, people that want to sell us stuff, people that want you to vote.
I'm totally cool with that. Only if it goes 2 ways. So you collect all of my information, then here's what I would to anyone who's listening. This is what I would offer up. That all those institutions are collecting all that data. You got to come clean,
right?
And if you do, then I have no problem you collecting all the data, but you come clean.
A lot of people don't understand what this data is going to be used for, and I guess that's probably
do you?
No,
I have no idea.
This is the lifestyle of Facebook. If we really cared, we would have preferred BlackBerry over Apple, because BlackBerry protected your right to privacy, and Apple does not so much, not the same way. Facebook, we just throw it out there. There's generations of kids that didn't have the choice to be photographed when they were babies all the way up until they're 16, but now we have generations of kids that have the choice and just throw everything down. They can and will be used against you in a public
or in a law
or in public, right? You can get shamed in and out of things and all kinds of things, and there's algorithms around that, not just what I do on the internet. My friend Bedula, things that he likes, the people he's talked to, reflects on what I do. And we're talking about collecting data on what I do and what I don't do. Again, I watch TED Talks on technology. They've been doing green screen with movements of sensors. They can take all my pictures, including this seminar.
The deep fakes, where now they can
and
superimpose
all my language. I use so many kucha today, and they can make it look like I did and said what I didn't say and do what I didn't do.
And then you wonder why I want nothing to do with it.
But
here in my small way, I'm putting myself out there completely, right?
Yeah, like I'm not putting my face on here, but on my Facebook feed, which all my family, all my friends see, I'll say like everything that I'm actually thinking about. Most of it's conspiratorial, but that's what I find.
If that's what that does it for you,
I find that the most relevant right now.
So the thing I love about comedy is it breaks through a lot of this stuff. I heard a black guy talking about, and he said something about, you don't believe in conspiracy theories. You don't believe in any of them, not one of them. He's like, I get that you don't believe all of them, but not one of them. He goes, I got a 10-year-old kid, and I lie to that kid all the time. Because he can't handle the truth, and blah, 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 and whatever. I just love it.
The reality of our history is that always people with positions of authority and power have colluded and conspired to further their own ends. So that's not new. So the fact that it's part of the behaviors, historically speaking, of humans. Now, having said that, to the more outlandish kind of conspiracies, is there any truth to that? This is why I ask for evidence. For me, all I want are evidence-based arguments. Demonstrate present evidence to support any kind of position.
Have a study. Let's get
No.
consultants.
Well, because I'm only
This shit's not getting done.
Yeah,
we're talking
but
about homeless
this
stuff and studies of addictions and stuff. Are you familiar? Okay, I can sidetrack, I guess. But are you familiar? There was a study with the rats and cocaine, and inevitably they all take the cocaine. They overdose or they get addicted to overdose. There's another guy called did a study called Rat Park. Are you familiar with this? Rat Park gave the rats drugs and water, but also partners, mates, friends, and challenges, wheels and tunnels and things to play with. And inevitably, they don't get addicted to drugs. They don't die of overdoses because they've got something to do with passion, purpose. They feel like their sense of community. Now, along with that, there's another study that I like to look at too. It's a couple of them. But with rats, they give rats everything that they need, everything they need to survive, and the population explodes. And this is not.
Universe 25. We did an episode on this.
Okay, but I'm not. I don't want to
I
bring
think
my thoughts.
John Coltrane was a researcher.
But they start seeing incest. They start seeing homosexuality, and I don't even like saying that. Right. But that whole population,
and then even with
cannibalism, they start eating,
even though they had plenty of food,
everything they need. They get to be so big until they start to turn on themselves until they get extinct.
You know why that occurred?
No.
He called it the spiritual death, but to me it was a purposeless existence.
Yeah.
Right.
We're seeing the same
so
thing.
Then, so okay. All right.
Right.
So then maybe it speaks to the value then of us, instead of taking somebody else at their word and saying this is your purpose, that you, the individual, now have to seek purpose for yourself, and you personalize it. And this is the argument now that I'm forever making, that every individual, because regardless of what your ideologies are, that it's universal. It's a universal fit. That you self-mastery can be your goal and your purpose, and then you could characterize it in the phrase that as individuals you become renegade, individualist, humanist, critical, objective thinkers.
I agree. Everybody needs a purpose, and everybody needs to have a passion that benefits something greater than themselves. I heard a quote from the regional fire chief, and I don't know if it's the same one now or not. He goes, "I'm at my best when I serve others," and you know what? I feel the same way. But I make a very different salary than they do. So somebody who volunteers their time but makes $150 to $500 or even $50 billion like Bill Gates. I don't take away from that, but people who don't have much and they volunteer their time, it means a lot more.
I completely agree.
I mean, part of that self. But I want to thank you. I think we should wrap up here. My dog.
I think it's a good time.
But so I appreciate, and as far as my passion, my purpose, myself, I want to. Part of the reason why I wanted to do this is because I want to support your passion, your purpose. I want you to know that you have purpose. I want you to know that all these conversations we've had in the past, I think I reflect upon. It's had influence on me, and so I want to support other people's purposes to give them hey, this matters to somebody else, and give them the fuel to keep that going. And one person that I don't follow a lot of people. I guess I do a little bit here and there. But Joe Rogan, I like him. I don't know if I like him or not, but
I like Joe
because he's a martial artist. But he's a comic, and he's been an on-air personality at different times. I'd like to be on his show too someday, because I think that I've got a lot of similar-minded. I do massage therapy with Joe. Talk about comedy. I want to go to the mothership someday, so I'm not going to get into JFL very easily. It's by invitation only. I'm not funny all the time. I don't want to just be a silly comic. To me, it actually has a good purpose. But to me, it's not three-dimensional, and I'm at least three-dimensional, if not five-dimensional, because to me, like the presenting of my ideas, public speaking, stand-up comedy, sharing ideas with people one-on-one as a massage therapist, trying to heal people, trying to teach people in martial arts, especially people with physical disabilities. To me, it's not 5 different directions that scatters my mind. I'm trying to gain stability and study all of this stuff from inside to outside, from outside to inside. I'm still trying to figure out who I am, and outside of my name and my social insurance number, SIN number, we're all born with SIN, and my identity and such like this. And I like to share, and I think people are cool.
I completely agree. I love humanity.
But everyone needs a purpose.
But I don't like individual humans.
George Carlin said individual people are actually pretty cool. When you get 5 people, they start acting like assholes and stuff, so it's a little bit different. But people that are, I don't even want to say disadvantaged, but we have the dream You know, like everyone wants to win the lottery. Everybody lives in
Sure,
congregate.
sure.
Like we should have learned from COVID that congregate living's not good yet. We're still building bigger cities and bigger apartments, and we're going to have more problems. Whether it's with bed bugs, you know, France now, Toronto, they're saying too, bed bugs becoming a problem.
Wow, guess what? Welcome to the modern world, right?
Yeah.
Change.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily all good.
No,
But it's not necessarily all bad either. And we got to look for the good, and you got to make the good, and you got to support the good.
I completely agree. It's been such a pleasure talking with you today. I always love having these conversations. These are the only kind of conversations I like to have.
Conversations that matter.
Yes. Slim, is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
No, I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
I had a great time.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Good. That's cool. And I hope you feel the same way, Ken.
I did. I had a great time. I am disappointed though that we ran out of
Well,
video
we're
2.5 hours ago, and none of this stuff got recorded.
No, it's all recorded. It's all gonna end up on the channel. And
if you guys stuck it out, man,
I'll
power to you.
No, I'll offer again that maybe within 6 months we can do this.
Yeah, I gotta go see if I still think the way I think, and I gotta.
Well, but it might be
challenge.
interesting to revisit a lot of things that we talked about in 6 months to see it gives chance for the world to change a little bit more, and we'll see if that has any kind of impact on what
So
we were
you've
talking
often
about.
said too, you're not sharing ideas to try and convert somebody.
Yeah, I'm not trying
support
to change
people.
anybody's
You're just
mind.
trying to support people who think like
That you're not alone.
I'm not going to convince you to vote, but if you would like to vote, you should go and vote, because I do think 20 million, 30 million people that vote any which way, and you want to turn the system upside down, then vote for an obscure party and watch everybody scramble. Look at the Liberals, like how they're going to start to change, how the Liberals are going to become more progressive, and the progressive Conservatives became more liberal back in the day, and it's going to wish-wash. But you want to turn it upside down, you vote for somebody that never expected to win. Vote for me.
Ken, you have my vote.
The world will be different if I run it. Don't be laughing, because
I'm not laughing. I do.
That's all in signatures.
If you were on the ballot, I'd go out of my way to vote for you.
I'm a blind guy with a vision for humanity.
I love your vision. In closing, for all of those of you who stuck around, thank you. I truly appreciate it. I'd like to finish by saying, question everything, including yourself, especially yourself.
Especially so.
Seek balance, seek knowledge, seek understanding, become balanced, become a renegade, individualist, humanist, critical objective thinker. Thank you for your time.
In closing, something you'll never see, my left side and my right side are going to unify to cheers myself. I can't drink on one go.